Hello everyone. I'm glad to see you on my channel. The story I'm going to tell you today is pure. It is true that all the bad things that happen in life happen for a reason. It is said that we can appreciate the good things, the things when they happen to us. I hope you enjoy this story. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience.
Too much. Andrew was in a lot of pain. Emily's pain faded into the background. She was scared out of her mind. 3 weeks passed, but Andrew still couldn't recover. He couldn't eat. He felt like he was the reason William had left the family. "Andrew, it's not your fault," his mother tried to convince him. "It's just that your father betrayed you and me." "Then I didn't listen to him. I went to play with those boys," the son cried. "They were smoking. Dad found out and thought I smoked with him. He didn't forgive me. He didn't love me after that." Emily clutched her head. Andrew felt so much guilt that there seemed to be no way out of it. A month passed and Emily decided to file for divorce after all. She had gained some moral strength. William knew about it right away. He got in his car, headed for his mother-in-law and father-in-law's house. He didn't know what to do next. On the one hand, he loved Emily and his son. The latter was very dear to him, but everything in their lives had become monotonous. He wanted new impressions. He began to feel that he was getting old. Perhaps that's what drove him to adventure. Irene Alexis, Gregory Myron, his son-in-law, lowered his head. "I ask you to speak to me." The father-in-law looked at him angrily. He would have loved to punch him in the face. But Irene Alexis was a mother herself. She was worried about both Emily and Andrew. "Billy," she sighed. "Do you realize the pain you've caused them? But what were you missing?" "I don't know," he shrugged. "I want to apologize to Emily. I love her. I want to go back to them." "I seriously doubt she'll take you back," my mother-in-law said with annoyance in her voice. "But what were you thinking? You've got a mistress under your nose. But you will come back. And how will you live? Emily will see the tank all the time. We'll leave here," suddenly declared son-in-law. "There won't be any tank there." "Where to?" My father-in-law entered the conversation. "Do you think the rumor about you will not reach there?" he scolded. Anyway, Emily's parents promised to talk to her. Naturally, she didn't want to hear about her husband's return. "Mom, don't tell me anything about him," she said angrily. "I hate him. I'll divorce him." "Emily, listen to me." Irene Alexis tried to look at the problem from every angle. "I don't care what you decide. But I'm asking you to think about Andrew. The child is suffering." And it was true. Emily burst into tears. Her heart couldn't bear the sadness of her son. He thought of his father all the time, and the fact that William hadn't shown up all this time made it worse. And then the day came when Andrew didn't come home from school. When Emily was on duty, his grandfather would pick him up. But the woman's father reported that Andrew didn't show up today. Emily called in a substitute to cover her shift. Of course, there was nothing the police could do. So they searched for Andrew on their own. "Billy," Irene said excitedly to Alexis. "Andrew's missing. Has he come to see you?" "No," he said worriedly. "I'll be right over," he promised and got into the car. As much as Emily felt bad, she didn't say anything. Everyone started looking for Andrew. They found him at one of the playgrounds. "Oh, my son." His mother rushed over to him. "Demochka." She started kissing the child. "Daddy." When he saw William, he rushed to him. "Daddy," cried the boy. You could say that that incident had determined everything. As much as Emily didn't want to, she made the choice to reconcile with William because of her son. Everyone sat at Emily's parents' house and had a serious conversation. "We're going to move to another town," the son-in-law said at once. Andrew didn't take a step away from him. Emily agreed. She realized that no matter how womanizer was her husband, he sincerely loved his son. Perhaps that was why William had just taken a mistress. Emily had no intention of leaving her family. But that didn't make her feel any better. Cheating was still cheating, no matter how you looked at it. 2 months later, they sold the house, and Emily and her family moved to a neighboring town, which was 70 kilometers away. They bought a small house, as it was a more promising place, and accordingly, life was more expensive. Emily got a job as a post nurse in one of the hospitals. William found a crew and started doing repairs with them. Such services were in great demand. Andrew recovered quickly, enjoyed going to his new school, and made friends very quickly. Emily's life, despite the fact that she was doing the same things as before, seemed to take a new direction. "Why don't we have a baby?" her husband once said to her. "A child would bring us joy." "I'm not ready yet," she sighed. "I've been traveling a lot in the last year, but you're already 38. Where else can I put it off?" He objected. "And I'm not getting any younger either. I'm already 42. You can't say Emily got married late. She was 25. It's just that her job was stressful, so you can't get pregnant right away. "Let's revisit this conversation in 6 months," the wife asked. Still, Emily had her doubts. She kept thinking that the day would come when William would cheat on her again. "There won't be any more cheating," she assured herself. "We're fine. Why should our past determine our future?" But no matter how much she set herself up for the best, her intuition told her that something was bound to happen in her life. Maybe that was the real reason Emily didn't want a second child. It was May. Emily and her family had already been living in the new place for 8 months. Everyone had gotten used to it and had no idea how they had lived in their hometown a year ago. Andrew had grown up. He had already turned 11. The boys in the new school were more advanced. The boy had somehow grown up quickly. He was very seriously interested in modeling. He and 2 of his friends went to a children's club where they built various ships in scale. "Very beautiful," praised Andrew's mother. "Son, how do you have the patience?" She laughed. "I would not be able to sit for hours and collect it all by crumbs." "You know, how interesting," Andrew said proudly. "We're going to exhibit in a competition." It wasn't that Andrew had grown cold to his father, but it was noticeable that he was now more interested in his friends than in his father. They still talked occasionally, especially when it came to their son's hobbies. But Emily could see that they had not become friends, and William was very tired. Sometimes there were urgent works, so that he could not even spend the night at home. And so Emily's life flowed in a new direction, and a few words about her work. In principle, the team was nothing. Emily immediately made a friend from the children's ward. The only one. The head therapist was a cold man. He even seemed stiff from the outside. And since Emily worked in his department, she still didn't understand how to communicate with him. Gregory Myron didn't seem to notice anyone. He was strict, but acted so professionally that without any doubt he could be called not only the best doctor of the hospital, but also of the whole region. Many, very many people bowed down to his talent, not that he admitted it. He paid no attention at all to rumors or anyone in his direction. He was constantly focused on his work. From the outside, it seemed that he could solve any task. There were enough instances where he alone was able to determine the true cause of an illness, and a man who was almost dying was discharged a month later. Gregory Myron didn't look like his usual self either. His hair was almost gray, but his face looked quite young. About 6 months later, Emily learned that he was only 47. It was Emily's shift when the doctor approached her. He looked concerned. "Emily," he said, "I need to pick you up for about an hour. I'll get Annie to keep an eye on the post. We're going to see a patient in 20 minutes. Be ready." Emily nodded. She rushed to Annie's procedure nurse. She informed her that the doctor had already spoken to her. "Annie, do you know what happened in there?" Emily asked. "He said it was a bad case," Annie replied. "There's an old woman. She's been in and out of the hospital a few times. Apparently she's gotten worse again. She has a son who keeps asking to be treated at home. And there's no room right now. I think that's why he's coming himself." Exactly 20 minutes later, the doctor came to pick Emily up and they headed to the address. Isaac Alexander was focused and silent. Emily was sometimes even afraid of his presence. He seemed sensual. So they reached the patient without a word. The doctor got out and headed for the entrance. The nurse hurried after him. The woman moaned. Emily's heart clenched. Isaac Alexander examined her and hesitated for a few moments. "Emily, take blood, urine," he said coldly. I'll take a sample of the vomit myself. Isaac Alexander told the woman's son that he would call him in 2 days, and they would decide what to do. The doctor and the nurse went downstairs and got into his car. Isaac Alexander often drove his vehicle out on work-related errands, and Emily had never heard him ask his superiors for compensation. "I think it's something autoimmune," the doctor whispered. Emily flinched in surprise. "I think it's something masquerading as another disease," he continued. "How is that possible? Don't the tests tell us what the real cause is?" "You can do all the possible tests, ultrasounds and CT scans, and still not see the real cause," Isaac Alexander replied. "You see, we still don't know how the immune system works. We have only a superficial idea, like a small iceberg on the surface of the ocean, and a huge block hidden underwater. Too many factors affect this process. She has no serious diseases, no cancer. But she's falling apart before our eyes. What's happening to her? There's no answer. It's like something triggers and everything goes to hell. Then she goes into remission and everything's more or less fine." "What are you going to do with her?" Emily asked with interest. "Are you going to put her in the hospital?" "First we'll look at the tests," said Isaac Alexander. He stopped talking. They drove the rest of the way in silence, and Emily didn't ask any more questions. The workday continued, and she forgot about her morning commute. The night passed quietly, the May air putting her in a good mood. Emily lay on the couch and thought about her family. Maybe he's right, a thought popped into her head. Having a girl will strengthen our family. "Yeah, I'm getting sick of medicine." Emily felt herself tanning. For years she had been responsible in her work, but the fatigue was building up. She and William didn't have the opportunity to go anywhere on vacation. They were making a little more money, but living in the city meant more expenses. Andrew went to sports and a modeling class, which also required money. "Will we be able to afford all this if we have a daughter?" she wondered. Morning came. Emily cheered up. A couple more hours and she would be going home. She got up and went about her duties. The ward was quiet and she began filling out the many logs. It was almost 8 o'clock when Emily got ready to go home. Another nurse had come to take over her shift, and Emily told her what had happened in the meantime. There were 3 post nurses on the ward who were constantly changing. One of them was a very quiet woman. Lila was in her 50s and she usually didn't get involved in anything. But Amber, who came in now, was noted for her talkativeness and tendency to gossip. Closely, Amber jumped up to her. "I have an anniversary in 3 days. You are required to attend. Do you understand me?" She burned a glare at her coworker. "Yeah, I'll be working anyway," Emily smiled. "What's your anniversary?" She was confused. "Well, of course it is. 40 years, Amber announced proudly. "There's even going to be a robot." That's what coworkers called Isaac Alexander among themselves. Can you imagine? When I told him that, say, "Let's eat cake, drink juice," he nodded to me in agreement. "I doubt he'll even eat the cake." Emily laughed. "I've never seen him at a meal. Here's coffee." Yeah, he's weird in general," Amber whispered in her ear. "I heard he couldn't save his wife, so he takes his anger out on everyone." What happened to her? Curiosity piqued Emily. "Didn't know he was married?" "Yeah, she had something serious going on there. He fought for her life. Took her to New York for a couple years. But nothing helped." Amber quickly echoed. "Although I can't imagine who would marry him at all." "Do you think he used to be this unsociable?" "Isaac Alexander is a good doctor," Emily sighed. "He's just unlucky. Well, as they say, keep it simple and people will reach out to you." The woman laughed. "Okay, until the anniversary." Emily didn't much like her co-worker's attitude toward the doctor. He was a genius. They didn't realize that. He may not have been able to save his wife, but he had helped hundreds, or even thousands of people, after all. The woman also thought about the fact that she didn't want to be present at all these meetings at work. It was enough that she had a friend in the children's ward. The rest of the staff didn't really get her attention. Emily walked into the house. Andrew was already at school and her husband William was at work. Despite the sleepless night, she didn't feel like sleeping. She sipped some hot tea and her body relaxed. Emily lay down on the bed and fell asleep. Thus began a new day for her. After lunch, Emily was already doing chores around the house. Dinner was on the stove, she was cutting a salad, went out to get some greens in the vegetable garden, and stopped. The smells of May wafted through the air. Emily had always dreamed of spending a few days watching spring come. But it had never worked out. There were always things to do at home, so she couldn't afford to just sit idle. Emily closed her eyes. It made the smells even more vivid. A bird sang to her left. It felt good. "I want a daughter," she said out loud and laughed at her own thoughts. Her soul sang. In the evening, her husband William returned from work. Andrew had returned from modeling. His eyes were burning. He spent almost half an hour telling his mother about his new job. Emily looked at him and realized that her boy had grown up a lot. A couple more years and he would turn into a guy. "Mom, we're going to a competition at the sports school. Can you give me some money?" He remembered soccer. Sure, she patted him on the head. "Son, how much do you need? I'll call your coach." Emily realized that her secret dream of quitting her job was simply unrealistic. She had always wanted her children to have a better life than she or her parents had. Her father and mother had done everything they could for her. But if they'd had the money, Emily would have chosen a different profession. Not to say she liked medicine. She had dreamed of becoming an architect or a designer as a child, but as they say, it didn't work out. Late in the afternoon, William returned. He ate quickly and went straight to bed. Emily marveled again at how their relationship with her son had changed in just over a year. Andrew was no longer as attached to William, perhaps still to his mother. But Emily could see that just a little more and Andrew would begin to live a life of his own already. "How strange does it feel," she thought as she went to bed. "Somehow I was sure that my son would always be a little boy who would depend on us." How quickly had things changed. The rest of the days flew by quickly. It was getting close to the weekend, which meant Emily had to go to work again. God, she'd completely forgotten about Amber. Emily remembered tonight. She needed to buy a gift. Nothing came to mind, and it was too late. Emily decided to give her coworker the money to buy what she wanted herself. As the morning began, the hustle and bustle began. Amber arrived at 9 with 2 large bags. She started setting the table. Emily was minding her own business. She took the history of the patient they had traveled to with the doctor at the time. The woman quickly ran her eyes over the test results. "Yeah, nothing much," she sighed. There was a slight elevation in the proteins in the general analysis, but it wasn't critical, just a fraction of a percent. Isaac Alexander is probably right. What if it all works on the principle of a wave and there was a failure? Then the indicators normalized. But it's already having repercussions. That's several cycles in a row. Emily wasn't a doctor, so she didn't really look into the problem. She didn't have the knowledge or experience. Amber came in. "Everyone is already in the nurse's room," she reported. Isaac Alexander looked tired. Everyone congratulated Amber. Emily slipped money into her pocket. The birthday girl glowed. "Most importantly, we wish you a speedy marriage." Annie raised her juice glass. "We're tired of waiting for you to find one." "Did you find him?" Amber said cryptically. "You won't believe it, just like I wanted. Tall, dark hair, green eyes, dimpled chin, about my age." "Wow," murmured the female half. Isaac Alexander was silent, but he looked pleased. "He came up to me on the street," Amber cheered. "He even wears a watch like I like, with a big face." Emily swallowed. Something niggled in her chest. She chased away the bad feeling. "And my favorite name is William," Amber declared. "Soon we'll be together, and I'll finally wear my wedding ring." The co-workers sat for half an hour, needing to return to their posts. Emily was pale. She didn't fully realize why she felt so heavy. The nurse walked over to her colleague, pretending to help her clear her desk. "Amber, I'm so happy for you," Emily said. "I hope your prince isn't married." "He's in the process of getting a divorce," she said happily. "Billy was unlucky with his wife, so it's her own fault she left him." "Does he have children?" Emily held her breath. Amber looked at her questioningly. "I'm worried about you. I don't know what's going on." "Well, yes, daughter," calmed the birthday girl. "Why are you being such a baby?" I'm not completely stupid. I know what I'm doing. Yes, Emily smiled wryly. Once again, I wish you well. Emily returned home the next day, but she still had her doubts. She could hardly wait until evening. It was about 11 p.m. when her husband returned. Hi, she went up to him. William, we hardly see each other. She lowered her eyes. Emily, what do you want? It's a big city. You can't just live here. You've got to make it work, he smiled. You know, I've been thinking about it, and I think you're right. I want to have a daughter, his wife said suddenly. William was taken aback at first, then put his arms around Emily and kissed her. I'm glad you said yes, he said in a pleased tone. It will be good for both of us. Emily calmed down that evening, falling asleep in her husband's loving arms. She didn't want to think about Amber or her fiancé anymore. Nearly 2 more weeks passed. Emily had already forgotten what had happened at her co-worker's anniversary party. Emily arrived early that day. Amber was dealing with a difficult patient. She had her cell phone on her desk. Suddenly it rang. Emily glanced at the screen. It said, "Beloved," something hot pulsed through her entire body. There was no response, and the phone went silent. Amber walked over. Emily informed her that someone had called her. The woman immediately grabbed the phone, pressing all the same name. Emily somehow miraculously looked at almost every digit of the number, except the last 2. The magazine fell out of her hands, and she hesitated, but Amber had already gone to the window. In a soft voice, she was telling her lover something. Emily sat down at the table. Everything in her head was upside down. For her, it was a matter of life and death and 2 numbers. God, was that really pounding in her temples? Emily quickly grabbed her phone, called her husband. The phone was busy. Her heart nearly jumped out. She kept pressing and pressing William's number. Tears streamed from her eyes. Finally, the dial tone went off. Amber came to the table. Emily, what's wrong? I'm at the facility, Billy's husband spoke quickly. The landlord arrived, giving us a scandal. I called the supervisor. Emily didn't know what to say. I was just worried, she barely said. And for good reason. He sighed. The boss won't pay us, and I'm so sick of it. You work, and then bang. For some reason we did nothing, and the house is shiny and the roof is intact, but somehow the owner doesn't see anything. Emily could barely contain herself, wiped away her tears, and went to the nurse's room. She was in a complicated emotional state. On the one hand, she felt like she was being cheated, and that made her seized with pain. On the other hand, she felt like it was all a coincidence, and she was just screwing with herself. Emily, come here. The door opened suddenly, and in walked Dr. Isaac Alexander. It was still 30 minutes before the start of her shift. Isaac Alexander's request seemed odd. Emily cleaned herself up so as not to give away her tears and made her way to the doctor. He asked her to sit down. I'm going on a business trip, he said seriously, and I need an assistant. I've already made arrangements with the head doctor. Tell me, what about your family? Will it be possible for you to be away for a few days? I know you have a son. Yes, Andrew is 11 now, the nurse replied, stammering. He's independent. He mostly gets himself home from his training and club. In all her years at the hospital, this was the first time she'd ever been sent on a business trip. All right then, Lily will be out tomorrow, Isaac informed Alexander. And I'll pick you up at 8. Be ready. Emily sat back in her chair, but the doctor was already immersed in his work. The nurse had left. Why me? She whispered. Wouldn't Amber be more suitable? She didn't have a family. It wasn't that Emily didn't want to go, but the whole thing seemed odd. Isaac Alexander never complimented her, and he never spoke to her except on business. Lily arrived in the evening, replacing Emily at the doctor's request. Now the nurses had to work together for a few days in 3 houses. Emily's husband couldn't believe his eyes. What happened? He asked. I'm going on a business trip tomorrow, she said. For 3 days. Billy, please take Andrew. He gets off much earlier than I do. It gets dark outside at 8 and he's home by half. Mom, don't worry about me. Her son came up to her. I'm not a little kid anymore. Yeah, she patted him on the head. Andrew, you can already say that you are a man? Have you sorted things out at work? Billy asked. Did you get paid? Yeah, our foreman came by with some guys. Anyway, they worked it out, he said. Do you know what a drag this is? Last month we didn't get paid for the repairs, which is almost $25,000 each. Emily hadn't thought much about it, but now she saw that almost every month someone would underpay or deliberately lower the price. All in all, William's job was precarious. Emily sighed. In the morning, a car pulled up at 8 sharp. She grabbed her bag, headed to the doctor's office. He greeted her coldly. Where are we going? She couldn't help herself. It's the first time I'm going on a business trip to a village, he replied calmly. We will spend the night at my relative's house. The residents have recently had serious kidney problems, and the region has asked me to take a look. Will you help me take tests, give injections? What could it be? Emily wondered. Some kind of waste being dumped. That's the thing. There aren't any businesses there, Isaac Alexander replied. They sent me an ultrasound. His kidneys are in a deplorable state, even to the point of kidney failure. The hospital in the municipal center is already overcrowded. I'm looking at those who are at home now. The local paramedic can't cope. We'll take the blood and urine to the lab this afternoon. Emily realized they had a tough job ahead of them. It was about the critically ill. At almost 11 o'clock, they pulled into the village. It was like a ghost. The streets were empty. Isaac Alexander stopped near one house and entered himself. After a while, he called out to Emily as well. The master is in the hospital now, he said. He knows I'll be with you for a few days at his place. Don't be afraid. The medical staff quickly dropped their belongings and began to go door to door. The pain and suffering made Emily's blood boil in her veins. Many lay half asleep. The paramedic was giving them painkillers, as there was nothing else he could do. Emily saw Isaac Alexander coldly examining one patient after another. She took blood and urine for analysis and placed them in special containers. Now into town, the doctor commanded. We were promised emergency tests. We don't have much time. What do you think? Did you find something? Emily looked at him with interest. Isaac Alexander, is this some kind of epidemic? No, I think it's something in the water, he replied. I've already collected 5 samples from the wells. We'll stop at the river and the lake on the way now. We'll have to take a look. They quickly took all the necessary things and drove into town. The doctor was silent. He was thinking hard about something. It looks like oil, the doctor's voice finally broke the silence. The toxic effect of heavy metals. If there aren't any factories around here, then what is it? Emily hesitated. You know, the best way is to walk around the village with a metal detector. And everything will fall into place at once, the doctor sighed. Some idiot buried some heavy metal residue somewhere. God knows what he did with them. But if we're talking about some kind of manufacturing, it's very possible. But how? I mean, they check cars at checkpoints. How could they smuggle this stuff in? Well, lead, cadmium, arsenic, for example. I'm not sure about mercury. Aluminum doesn't have such an effect on humans. They're more afraid of it. But the others, it's enough to lose 5 or 10 pounds somewhere near the source. And they didn't do it now. Maybe 6 months ago. It's just that now it's all gone into the groundwater and it's coming out of the wells. The car stopped outside the local hospital. Emily realized they'd come to the next town over. This whole situation was freaking her out. Isaac Alexander took all the biological material to the laboratory and started talking to the head doctor. And Emily stood aside and thought about her own. Until almost 3 o'clock, the doctor was busy examining the injured patients. Unfortunately, 3 had already died. The kidneys were too seriously damaged. In addition, the small town hospital did not have expensive medicines. It was almost 8 when Isaac Alexander approached Emily again. She, too, helped him from time to time. We're going home, he said. We'll stop at some store on the way. Get something for dinner, the doctor offered tiredly. Unfortunately, my relative hasn't gotten any better. All we can do is wait. Emily, did you have to travel so much during the day that you couldn't even talk? Isaac Alexander himself went to the store, bought food and water. Back in his college days, he made scrambled eggs in the kitchen. Although you could say, nothing has changed in my life since those times. I'm not a foodie at all, I don't have enough time for that. I'm not much of a cook either, Emily smiled, although my family status obliges me to. But family is always a support, replied Isaac Alexander. I can't say that I don't like loneliness, but sometimes he fell silent. I heard that your wife died, Emily ventured. I'm sorry. Well, that was a long time ago, he sighed. Besides, I'm so caught up in my work that I try not to think about it. Well, let's drink tea and go to bed. Tomorrow is not going to be an easy day. Perhaps we'll be able to get some results. Emily cleared the table. Isaac Alexander showed her the room to make her own bed in the next room. The woman had already called her husband. He was home. Andrew was already asleep. The busy day kept Emily from returning to her thoughts. She closed her eyes. A green meadow appeared in front of her, and Emily heard some voices. The vision turned into a dream, and the woman fell deeply into it. She awoke abruptly. Though still light at heart, the dream did not bode well for her. She was marrying William, saw her beautiful dress, her veil. Something will happen, she muttered, and she heard the door creak open. But something was catching. The doctor was already up, putting the kettle on in the kitchen. Emily came to her senses, and having changed her clothes, left the room. Good morning, he said as dryly as before. Let's have breakfast. We need to see the patients, and then we'll go back to the city. Both were silent, drinking coffee. Emily even liked Isaac Alexander's company. He didn't ask questions, didn't pry. Toward the end, she couldn't take it anymore. Why did you take me? After all, I have not worked with you for so long, she asked. That's exactly the reason. I know the others very well, he said seriously. Emily was silent. She didn't quite understand what the doctor meant, but she didn't ask. 2 of the patients got worse. They had to be sent to the hospital. Isaac Alexander didn't seem nervous, but Emily could tell by the way his cheekbones moved. The city had gotten the first results. The prognosis was unfavorable, but just as I thought, lead and arsenic, he sighed. They dumped something right where the artesian pools were, brought the waste in and just poured it out of the barrels. Emily was shocked, but from the results, the water was the problem. The heavy metal levels were more than 20 times higher. The administration had already banned the use of the spring water for any purpose. Since few people kept livestock in the village, the deaths were not so widespread. The goats suffered the most. Isaac Alexander called the region time and time again, beating out the necessary drugs. The case reached New York. It was impossible to delay it, threatened the death of people. More doctors came to the village from other districts. The seriously ill began to be sent to places where there were opportunities for treatment and could be connected to the machines. The 3rd day was over. Emily and the doctor were going home. The relative they were staying with was feeling better, so there was hope for Isaac Alexander. Is that your brother? Emily asked him on the way home. I'm very happy for him and for you. No, he is my wife's brother, Isaac Alexander answered. After her death, we sometimes communicate. Emily sank back into herself, remembering last night's dream. Her whole body was covered with goosebumps. Actually, they were supposed to arrive tomorrow morning, but Isaac Alexander decided to return at night. Emily didn't bother calling the household, carefully opened the wicket gate, then inserted the key as well, and the front door opened. The house was dark. Emily went in to see her son. He was asleep. She headed to her room and William was gone. Her wife walked to the hall, but he was absent there as well. She walked toward the garage. William always drove the car in for the night, and to her amazement, the car wasn't there either. Emily felt dizzy and dialed William. He didn't answer. It was 2 on the clock. God, where is he? She sobbed. Her nerves had frayed over the last few days, and Emily couldn't keep her cool. She could barely sleep. She had to stay home tomorrow, and her shift started the day after. Mom, hi. Andrew was surprised to see her early in the morning. I thought I would see you only in the evening. Son, where is father? she asked in a trembling voice. "Did you see him last night?" "Yes. When I went to bed, he was at home," Andrew answered at once. "Yeah, he'd already left for work. Look at the time. Dad's got a big order now, so he's leaving early these days." "So you haven't seen him in the mornings?" Emily asked. "Andrew, answer me." No shrugged his son. "Mom, what's going on? We weren't even expecting you until tonight. Dad said you'd go straight to work from your business trip." That was right. That was Emily's plan at first, but the other post nurse gave her until tomorrow morning to rest. Emily had forgotten to warn William about that. Something's not right here, she thought. When Andrew left for school, she wondered, where has he been sleeping all this time? It's no use asking him. I must find out for myself. William opened his eyes and stretched sweetly. Amber lay next to him. She was still asleep. The man got up and began to dress. "This has to end," he muttered to himself. Our affair had gone on too long. Still, William couldn't help himself. He didn't know what he wanted. He didn't want to lose Emily, because she was a reliable person. With her, he could spend a peaceful old age, and if anything, she would look after him. On the other hand, he was bored. He stood and looked at himself in the mirror and saw great potential. Except with Emily, it wasn't being realized. He wanted passion, crazy emotions, in general, everything that usually happens with mistresses. William forgot about Tammy all too quickly. He no longer felt bad about it, and Emily wouldn't know about it. Well, he'd go out for a couple months. It's nothing. He'd still be with his wife, he thought. The most interesting thing was that only in the middle of the novel William learned that Amber works in the same hospital where his wife works. Moreover, they were, you could say, co-workers. This confused William at first. He immediately wanted to break up with Amber, but she was so into him that he realized not yet ready to leave her. That's how they met. According to the man, he was in the process of divorce because of a worthless wife. Naturally, he was unhappy. And since he was earning well and gave Amber good gifts, she had already made plans for him. She had to marry William, and at any cost. For a very conflicted Amber, who could not get along with anyone until 40 years old, it was the last chance. So the woman wasn't backing down. "Good morning, Kitty," heard the man behind him. "Are you awake already? Come here." She held out her arms to him. "Amber, I'll finish one thing and we'll have a serious talk," William smiled. "Yes, I hope it's about our future," her eyes lit up. "Billy, when are we going to be together?" "About our future," he answered. Except William was going to talk about ending the relationship, not continuing it. Amber pulled her lover toward her. She was happy. She had no doubt that everything would be her way now. Amber had wanted to quit her job for a long time. She was fed up with it already. William looked so much like the kind of man who could provide for Amber. She had been living the dream of him for the last few weeks. Amber was ready to write her resignation letter tomorrow, but she needed assurances. Until William put an engagement ring on her finger, there was a chance he'd run away from her. Amber's sharp tongue scared off even the most patient men who seemed to love her. All in all, the lovers made different plans for each other. William had cooled his passion, and Amber no longer stirred a storm of emotion in him. He quickly turned on his phone and turned pale. Emily had called him many times, and at night. "Okay, I need to get to work. The chief has already called several times." He quickly rushed out of the house. What's her problem? He thought as he got in his car and drove away from Amber's house. Around the corner, he stopped. "Emily, hi," he heard his wife's voice. "I'm sorry, I slept at the site. Didn't hear you call?" "Billy will talk to you later," she sounded angry. "I'm busy right now." William flinched. Something told him that Emily didn't believe his fables. Okay, later means later. He threw the phone down angrily and drove to work. Basically, they had already finished the renovations. They'd had a few days of downtime, and he'd spent all that time at Amber's place, coming over only in the evening so his son wouldn't suspect anything. "I should have broken up with her when she told him she was working at the hospital," the man said angrily to himself. "God forbid Emily finds out. She wouldn't forgive me this time. I don't need Amber for nothing, but I'm not leaving Emily." The man didn't even see himself contradicting himself. In his mind, it was normal to have an affair on the side and then kiss his wife as if nothing had happened. William thought that if he was living with Emily, it meant he loved her. There are no other options. He drove up to a friend's house with whom they worked together. There was nothing to do, and he didn't want to stay at Amber's place either. She'd already gotten everything she wanted the night before, and William was tired of her. But the mistress herself didn't think so. "Billy, can you get out for half an hour? I really need your help," she called to him. He went outside so his friend wouldn't hear him. "Yeah, I bought something here, something heavy. I need you to come over. The cab didn't want to take me." "All right. Where are you?" "I got it. I'll be there in 15 minutes, he promised. Emily was very angry with her husband. She felt like this was all some kind of game. The evidence that William was hiding something was too obvious. His excuses didn't convince her. Emily couldn't find a place to be. She was very tired, but she couldn't sleep. She decided to go downtown to get some distraction, to go shopping. Emily got off the bus with no mood and headed towards the mall. She sat down on a bench. It was nice out, she sighed and looked around, and her gaze fell on the cars standing near the building. In the far corner, she saw some woman kissing her beau. Emily looked closely, but didn't see anything unusual. The lovers were too far away to see them in detail. But a car pulled away, and suddenly Emily saw that it was their passenger car. She had no doubt about it. Cab. She ran up to the car with the checkered license plate. "Please follow that blue Lada, just so they don't see us." "We're in pursuit," laughed the cabbie. "I hope there won't be a shootout." "No," Emily said angrily. "I don't have a gun. I don't carry them in public." The man froze in his seat. He didn't really like the passenger's joke, and they drove for about 20 minutes. William turned down a street. The cabbie followed him. The car stopped and Amber got out. The cab drove past. Emily tried to hide so she wouldn't be seen and saw her husband pulling something heavy out. It was a struggle for the woman to get home. She was torn by unbearable pain. She was alone, screaming for relief. At first she wanted to call her husband and tell him everything, but then she pulled herself together and wrote a message to her son that she would go to work today. She arrived at the hospital that night, asked her shift worker to go home. "Emily, what are you doing here?" Her lips quivered. "I'm fine. I thought I'd let Lily rest. I'll be on duty tonight. Can't you, Alexander?" Looked at her pale face, answered nothing, went to his room. Emily didn't know he was sleeping at the hospital tonight, too. He'd gotten a good night's sleep during the day. While they were gone, a patient had been brought in who urgently needed help. He had to be under constant observation for at least a couple days. It was almost 1 o'clock in the morning. Emily sat in the nurse's room, crying. She didn't want to live, even though all of this was obvious. Emily didn't think she couldn't live through it this time. "I'm sorry, Andrew," she whispered. "Son, but I can't go on like this." She moved the jar of medication toward her. She didn't have the strength to fight anymore. She gave up, brought a mug of water to her lips, trembling, poured the pills on the table. Everyone slept so she would be found dead in the morning. Emily was so absorbed in her pain that she didn't even hear the footsteps. She put the palm of her hand to her mouth with the pills. "What are you doing?" Isaac Alexander rushed to her, grabbed the nurse's hand, and all the pills flew to the floor. "Emily, what's going on?" He squeezed her palm so tightly that she even shrieked. The woman stared at him blankly. The doctor opened the faucet, drew water, poured it over her head with lightning speed. "What are you doing?" "I'm wet." She came to her senses. She waved her hands away from the doctor. Isaac Alexander still managed to wipe her hair with a towel. He pulled the woman against him. Emily hugged him and sobbed loudly. "It's all right," he said in a gentle voice. "Emily, you're going to feel better now." He grabbed the nurse and dragged her into his office. He quickly took out some pills and threw them into a glass of water. Emily managed to drink them down. She was trembling. Isaac Alexander kept stroking her head. She began to calm down. "Thank you," she whispered. "Oh my God, I almost poisoned myself." She didn't even have the strength to cry. Isaac Alexander put her on the couch and stayed with her until she fell asleep. "Stupid girl," he scolded as he returned to his office. "No problem is worth taking your own life." Around 6, Emily opened her eyes and immediately remembered what had happened. She felt both ashamed and hurt that she could have died. She opened the door. Isaac Alexander was asleep. She gazed into his face. It was filled with light. "I guess there are angels on earth, after all," she thought. That's how kindness and a desire to help people hide behind coldness and calculating. Isaac Alexander seemed so dear to her. Emily sat quietly in her chair and watched him. She didn't know how much time had passed, but at one point the doctor opened his eyes. "How long?" he asked immediately. "Emily, are you okay?" "Yes, thanks to you, I didn't make a fatal mistake. Otherwise I wouldn't be here," she lowered her eyes. "Can you tell me what happened?" The doctor sat down on the couch. "Judging by what you wanted to do, something serious." "My husband cheated on me." And not for the first time, tears flowed down her cheeks. "When we were still living at home, he had an affair with our neighbor." And now Emily was silent. "And now my husband is having an affair with Amber, remember? She told me at her birthday party that she'd met a prince. Well, it was him. I saw them together. Yeah, it's Santa Barbara." Isaac Alexander scratched his head. "But if he's such an unreliable man, then he's hardly worth you taking your life because of him." "I certainly won't now. It was some kind of obsession. I don't know how to explain it to you. I was in so much pain," she whispered. "I understand. I was in the same situation myself once. After my wife died, I didn't want to live either. I tried slitting my wrists once, but I couldn't. And the second time I wanted to hang myself. But all the time someone held me back. I trusted this force, and now I am grateful to God that he did not allow my death. You have to live, no matter how difficult it is. It's the only way to understand why we've been given all this." Emily calmed down. She realized clearly that she would not stay with William, no matter how much their son suffered. She could never forgive her husband again. By 8, Amber came in, radiant. Emily was as cold to her as ever. "Were you tortured last night?" She was outraged. "Why are you looking at me like I'm the enemy?" Emily went to change. A doctor approached the post nurse. Isaac Alexander asked her to come in to see him. "You wanted to see me?" Amber tossed the doctor nonchalantly. "I see Semyonov hasn't gotten any better." "Yes, but this isn't about him," the doctor replied calmly. "Amber, I'd like us to have a private conversation." The nurse jumped. The first thing that came to her mind was that Isaac Alexander would be imposing on her as a fiancé. "Amber, a bad situation has come up," he began, "and I don't even know how to tell you about it." "What is it?" The woman exclaimed impatiently. "If you want to ask me out, I'm sorry, I'm busy." "That's exactly what this is about. Amber, are you going to marry someone else's husband?" Isaac Alexander's cheekbones flared. "I don't know how this mistake happened, but your fiancé is Emily's husband. She saw you outside the mall yesterday. She followed you in a cab to your house. Her husband gave you a ride," Isaac Alexander pointed out. What a load of crap. Amber jumped out of his office and started calling her lover. "Billy, answer quickly." "Your wife, Emily." William disconnected immediately. Amber tried calling him many more times, but he blocked her number. Emily had already gone home, so she couldn't talk to her in person. William realized he was busted, angry at himself, but he had to get out of it somehow. The best option was to disappear out of sight for a few days for now to figure something out. Amber dialed up her rival. She was insanely angry, except the woman didn't realize that Emily had nothing to do with it at all. "You stupid fool." She yelled into the phone. "Why are you slandering me? Are you trying to make me look bad? You're having an affair with Billy and you want to get rid of witnesses." Amber, what are you talking about? Emily tried to talk to her calmly. Are you the one going out with my husband? I didn't interfere with your family. You're lying, Amber screamed. Are you sleeping with that asshole? I saw you. So you're cheating on your husband? The bitch loves my Billy. The woman didn't want to admit she'd been caught. It wasn't even that William had inherently lied to her. Amber didn't want to admit she'd gotten herself into such a messy mess. She just couldn't. Her reputation wouldn't let her. Amber was ready to tear everyone apart. William still hadn't returned her calls. The woman had worked her shift, but she wasn't going to let it go. Well, I'll show you, she threatened Emily. The bitch couldn't hold on to a man, and now she's blaming me. Amber had already realized that William was really her husband. But instead of being angry at him, she focused all her hatred on Emily. I'll show you. You'll be kicked out of the hospital, she threatened. You idiot. She got a man like that. Emily couldn't reach William either. Her son came home that evening, so she decided to talk to Andrew. Son, she sighed, you're a big boy and you understand something about life. Looked at him, mother. It happens that adults can go their separate ways. Did you and your father have a fight? The boy guessed. I won't get involved. If Dad leaves us, I won't feel guilty anymore, he reassured her. Thank you, Emily hugged him. Andrew, I love you so much. She already wanted to fly out of this cage to freedom, and she finally calmed down. She no longer saw any obstacle to staying with her husband. She had endured almost a year for her son's sake, but William had not changed, and Emily had no idea what problems lay ahead. Emily entered the hospital. She hated to cross paths with Amber, but Amber was waiting for her. Remember, she whirled her hands in front of her face. I'm not to be trifled with. Is it your fault that Billy cheated on you? I know what was really going on between you two. He told me everything. The other guy would have kicked you out of the house a long time ago. She was yelling really loud on purpose. What did he tell you? Emily asked with her arms crossed over her chest. Did he catch me with a man? That, too, Amber said angrily. I can see why you got your hands on that robot. Billy told me how you were having an affair with the guy in charge at your house. He wouldn't leave you for your son. The whole hospital was buzzing about Emily sleeping with Isaac Alexander. Naturally, Amber did it deliberately to cover her dirty deeds. Now, there were few people who believed Emily's words, even if she did say that Amber had been out with William. Emily knocked on the door to the doctor's office, walked in and couldn't stand it, covered her face with her hand and sobbed. Emily, what happened? He came up to her. Did your husband hurt you? No. Amber told everyone that you and I were lovers. Can you believe it? She sobbed. What the hell is that? He swore. She's confused about her connections. She can't see what's true and what isn't. And the worst thing is that everyone believes her. Emily looked at him with eyes full of tears. Idiot. She asked for it. He left the office abruptly. I'll cut her down. After lunch, the head doctor summoned Amber to his office. Isaac Alexander and Emily were already in the office. Amber Stevens, the chief, addressed her. On what grounds did you decide that your co-workers were engaging in lewd behavior at work? Did you see it with your own eyes? Amber really wanted to lie, but she felt the consequences would not be pleasant. No, she said quietly, her eyes downcast and silent. The head doctor gave her a hard look. Unfortunately, he did something she had not expected. He paused. You are fired, he said loudly. Bring a statement, and I'll sign it. Take it easy, the head doctor said. Amber, like you are a pond, and real specialists like Isaac Alexander can be counted on the fingers. If you had a brain, you wouldn't be making all this up. Amber walked out of the head doctor's office in crocodile tears, and her career was over. Her job didn't seem so bad now. Amber had gotten a small house from her first husband, so basically she'd settled into life pretty well. Now she had no money and no job. Emily thanked the doctor for his support and got to work. She decided not to wait any longer. Tomorrow morning she would try to find her husband. Isaac Alexander, let me use your phone to make a call, Emily asked the doctor before leaving. My husband doesn't take my calls. The doctor handed her the phone and left the office. Emily had a feeling William would answer it for her, since the call could have been from a potential client. "Hello," the wife spoke quickly. "I'm filing for divorce. There can be no talking. Your half of the house I'll buy out." "Okay, I'll be there," William angrily replied and disconnected the phone. Emily drove home with only one question: where would she get the money for the house? Perhaps there was something her parents could do to help her. Maybe he would agree to match the alimony? The thought crossed her mind, though I'd even agree without them, just so he'd be out of my life. Before Emily could enter the house, William appeared on the doorstep. Andrew was already at school. "Please don't be silly," Emily said immediately. "Billy, we're adults. Everything has to be paid for. If you didn't understand anything after the first time, you'll never understand again." William didn't really engage in dialogue. He agreed to give up his share of the alimony. Basically, he was making good money. He packed some things and left. Emily was overjoyed. As she found out later, he'd moved in with Amber. The latter walked around with her head held high and said that she was right all along, but as soon as she got what she wanted, she started acting like she always had. That's why William never even got married. 6 months later, he packed up his things and left in an unknown direction. Amber had no choice but to badmouth him now. It wasn't like she could make a fool of herself. It was always someone else's fault in Amber's life. The relationship between Emily and Isaac Alexander, on the other hand, had become friendlier and warmer. "Emily, come see me," the doctor called her one day. "It's an emergency," he asked. Emily rushed over. The doctor was standing by the window, as he always did. He had a cup of coffee in his hands. "It's my birthday today," he smiled. "Would you like to keep me company? It's been so long since I've celebrated it. Do you want to take Andrew with you?" And go where her eyes lit up. "Isaac Alexander. I suggest someplace quiet." Andrew chatted with his father. To his mother's surprise, he'd gotten through the divorce easily. He was already going on 13. "Young one, sit by yourself," the son replied to her invitation. "You, on the other hand, Isaac Alexander will bring you. You won't be bored alone at home." She hugged him. "Andrew, you're all grown up now, so I understand you two needing to babysit," he laughed. "Ma, I like him." "Nice uncle." Nobody called him uncle for sure, laughed his mother. "Okay, rest up." She ruffled her son's hair. That night was a new phase in the lives of both Emily and Isaac Alexander. 3 months later, they were married. And now Emily was taking care of him, keeping him from working so much. Of course, it was hard for Isaac Alexander to relax after so many years of hard work. But in their lives, there was another circumstance. Emily, almost 40, gave birth to his daughter. Isaac Alexander reduced the load at work to spend more time with his wife and children. They sold Emily's house and the doctor's parents' house, which was empty for many years. So they were able to travel a little and pamper the children. And they tried not to hurt themselves. Isaac Alexander was well paid for consultations in fee-based clinics. And Emily, as soon as her daughter grew up, returned to her home hospital. Naomi stood and waited for her friend Lillian, who was talking to the teacher. The girl looked at the school and said goodbye to the school with pleasure. She had finished the 11th grade. Naomi had already counted down each day for half a year when she would leave the walls of the educational institution. The girl smiled bitterly and thought that she used to love learning and went to school with pleasure, but everything had changed overnight. It was because the girl's father had been drinking hard liquor for as long as she could remember. And then, for educational purposes, Sam used to beat her and her older brother with a belt. When Naomi and Matthew were little, they hid behind their mother's skirt and all the beatings went to the woman. As they grew up, when they saw their father coming home in a drunken state, they tried to hide from him. This made Sam angry, and he took his anger out on his wife, Zendia. The children saw this, but they could not help it, and only cried, hiding in a secluded place. They wished at that moment that some fairy tale hero would come and save their mother. Naomi and her brother grew up and often asked their mother why she tolerated their father's beatings. The woman smiled and replied that when they grew up, they would understand. Naomi could not understand her mother's answers, and one day she asked, "Yes, Mammy, but you are suffering physically. Why don't you divorce Daddy?" The girl asked, "Daughter, you see, but I love your father, And remember that there is a folk saying that if a husband beats his wife, it means he loves her. My mother said, "What a love that you have to cover your bruises with foundation." I certainly wouldn't want that kind of relationship with my future husband, her daughter said passionately. Mate, you have to grow up first, and then see when you get married, her mother taught her. Time was passing. Matthew was already going on his 18th year, and now a lad. When his father cracked his mother, he was already sticking up for her. Zendaya realized that her son was trying to shield her from her own husband. She often told Matthew to stay away from him when his father was raging. The son would reply that he could not bear to see his father behave inappropriately, and the woman was very much afraid that the day would come when Matthew would one day not be able to stand it and raise his hand against his father. And that day came. Sam came from the Kalem in a bad mood, and instead of a bottle of white wine, he was given a kilogram of dumplings and a couple of cans of billets. His wife was happy about it, as it was a great help for the family, because her husband did not work anywhere, and she worked as a postmistress and received a small salary. Zendaya only therefore said, enthusiastically, when her husband returned, "Now, what a pleasant surprise. It's been a long time since we've had dumplings, and now I'm going to make them, and we'll have a royal dinner." Zendaya cheered. "Why are you clamoring? You better give me money for a bottle," said my husband angrily. "I don't have any, darling. I have a couple of hundred in my purse for bread, and my salary is still 3 days away." The woman calmed down at once. "We can live without bread. Dumplings have dough, and this is the same bread," he said, and took his wife's bag, from which he pulled out a small purse. And then the man took out 200 and smiled contentedly. Zendaya saw this and rushed to her husband to stop him, but he pushed her away angrily. The woman tearfully asked to keep the money. The wife's request made the man angry. Sam hit his wife several times on the cheek with the palm of his hand. At that moment, his son, who had just come home from work, came into the room to hear the noise. Matthew immediately realized the whole situation and instantly jumped up to his father to stop him from hitting his mother again. But Sam had already pushed his wife hard, and the woman fell to the floor, her head hitting the wall. Zendaya moaned weakly, but Matthew was pouncing on his father, the head of the family. Seeing that his son wanted to hit him, pushed the boy away, and then a fight broke out between them. Zendaya yelled for them to stop and got up off the floor to stop the scuffle. As soon as the woman approached them, her husband dodged and kicked her in the side. The spouse bent down and slowly settled to the floor. When Matthew saw his mother slump down, screaming in pain, he ran to the kitchen and grabbed a knife. The young man went back and in a fit of rage stabbed his father several times and only ran up to his mother when his father collapsed. Zendaya grabbed her son's hand and asked him to call an ambulance, and then the police arrived at the scene shortly afterwards. The woman was taken by ambulance to the hospital, but Sam was taken to the morgue as he died of his injuries. Matthew was taken to the station by law enforcement officials until the circumstances were clarified. Nayeli found out about all this when she came home from a walk. The girl was informed by her neighbor, who had been invited as a witness. Nayeli tried to get more information from her neighbor, but she said she didn't know all the details. The girl thanked the old woman and went home, and only then did she let the tears flow. She realized that at the moment she would not know anything concrete until she saw her mother, and she couldn't see her, because at that time the shuttle bus to the city was no longer running, and there was no money for a cab. The girl did not sleep a wink all night. She wondered what had happened, and as soon as morning came, she took the first flight to the city. After a while, Nayeli was already in her mother's room. Zendaya told her what had happened. The woman sobbed convulsively at times as she told her story, trying to hold back her sobs. When Zendaya told everything to her daughter, she started to get out of bed, saying that she would not stay in the hospital. Nayeli tried to confront her mom, saying she had already spoken to a doctor, and the doctor reported that the victim had a broken arm and a concussion. Mother looked at her sadly after her daughter's words and said in a whisper, "No, don't you understand? Your father is no longer alive, and your brother will be punished for what he did," she said. "But your escape won't change anything. You won't resurrect your father." Her daughter tried to reason with her. "You're right about that, but I have to see my husband off. He is my husband, and he deserves a proper burial," the woman cried. "Mom, I don't care about my father because he used to abuse you all the time, and we got a lot of abuse from him and my brother too. And now he's almost hurt you, and you're still thinking for him," she said indignantly. "Stop talking so badly about your father. No one gave you the right to do that," her mother said sharply. and then added a little softer, "When you love a man with all your heart, you will understand me. And I loved your father," my mother said with tears in her eyes. Zendaya was soon discharged from the hospital under a receipt, and the mother and daughter, before leaving for home, stopped by the station where Matthew was stationed. They learned there that the young man would not be released because he had been arrested for a crime he had committed and had confessed to. Zendaya asked the law enforcement officer not to judge her son because he had stood up for her. However, the man in uniform told the woman that he did not decide anything. There would be an investigation and then a trial. A short time later, Sam was buried. It was a great surprise to Nayeli that so many people had come to say goodbye to this man who couldn't live a day without drinking. The girl looked at the villagers in amazement as they said nice things about her father. Nayeli couldn't understand how these people could talk so flatteringly about this man who tinkered with his wife all the time. The day after the funeral, Natasha was visited by a friend who already knew everything that had happened. Lillian asked her mate how Zendaya was feeling. Nayeli grinned and sadly replied that her mother was mourning her beloved husband and that Matthew might get punished. Lillian took a seat next to her friend and spoke. "It's going to be hard for your mother to live here now. If she's still crying for Matthew," she said. "Hey, what the hell are you talking about? He's her son." Nayeli said indignantly. "No offense, but, I overheard my parents talking last night, and I better tell you about it so you're ready. So they blame your brother for everything, that he took your father's life on purpose. You see, your father was like a wand to the villagers. He had golden hands. He will cover the roof, and he can make a log cabin and dig a well, and he did it all for free. They would buy him a bubble and he was glad, but now he had no one to turn to for help, so he didn't have to pay big bucks. Our villagers just used hands and they don't care what happens to Matthew," she said openly. "But my brother was protecting my mother. It wasn't his fault," Nayeli replied angrily. "And I told you why the villagers say that. You and I know what your father was really like, but to others, he was cheerful and always there to help for a small fee. I'm just telling you this so that you'll be ready when you hear something unseemly said about you," she explained. And in fact, a couple of days after Nayeli's father's funeral, the girl went to the store to buy bread. She passed a neighbor who lived a few houses down from them. Nayeli said a polite hello to the woman, but the woman gave her a scornful look and remained silent. The girl shrugged her perplexed shoulders and went on her way, as suddenly she heard from her neighbor, "Matthew's a bastard. You've ruined such a man. In a few months' time, there will be no one to dig the garden because Sam is no longer in this world and he was such a man. And it's all your brother's fault," the woman wailed. Nayeli turned around to face the woman and shouted fervently, "Yeah, what do you know? My father is a terrible man. He beat his wife, terrorized his children. And Matthew was protecting his own mother from a tyrant, and my brother didn't kill her on purpose. It just happened. She tried to get through to her neighbor. Yes, we all know this. A guy raised his hand on his spouse. But your mother continued to live with this man, which means she enjoyed it. And Matthew laid a hand on his own father. He had no right to do that. You're probably just like your brother," the woman said, angrily, spitting into the snow and walking away. Nayeli barely held back her tears to keep from crying in the street. She didn't go to the store, but ran home. She went home, and only then did she let the tears flow. Her mother came out of the room crying. Zendaya went to her daughter and sat down beside her and asked what was wrong, and the girl told everything in detail. The mother hugged her daughter and asked her to calm down, then said softly, "Be patient, my sunshine. You know that there are evil tongues in the village, so you've got a lady who can't wait to say mean things. Wait. Time will pass and the passions will calm down. You and I have to worry about Matthew now, because the investigation is going on. And the trial is coming soon," she said. "Now, he'll definitely get jail time. How will we live without him? I'm going to finish school and go to the city, and you'll be all alone," her daughter worried. "It's okay, don't worry about me. Okay, I see that you didn't buy any bread. Come on, I'll make pancakes quickly," said the woman. A trial was soon held. Matthew was given several years in prison. Nayeli and her mother were numb when they heard the sentence. They had hoped the punishment would not be so severe. Zendaya came to her senses after a few minutes and wailed. As Matthew was being led away from the courtroom, he shouted to Natalka to take care of her mother. She only nodded in response, for she could not speak, for she had a lump in her throat that she could not swallow. And now Nayeli had finished school and stood waiting for her friend. During that time when Matthew had been locked up, she had repeatedly heard angry words that her brother was the last scoundrel and that he hadn't gotten enough jail time. Nayeli tried to ignore such people, but still there was a residue on her soul after such words. Soon Lillian came up and cheerfully announced that she was free to go home. Nele smiled at her friend and asked if she was ready to go to the city in the near future. Lillian winked mischievously and nodded happily. A short time later, Naila was about to leave for the city to go to the institute. Before leaving, her mother sat her daughter down beside her and said that she wanted to talk to her. The girl willingly replied that she was listening attentively and looked at her mother. Zendia looked at her daughter and said with a sad smile, "How beautiful you've become. Your eyelashes are long, your lips are neat. I want to tell you, daughter, that city people are very different from our village people. And the guys there make sweet speeches that make girls lose their heads," she said. "Mom, if you're telling me to be discreet, I'll keep that in mind. Don't worry about that. But I want to tell you something too. If I can get into an economic institute, I won't come here, but I'll stay in the city and get a job. I'll rent a room and live there, and next year I'll try again. Don't take offense, but I don't want to go back to the village, even though it's been 6 months since my father's death, and the evil tongue still can't calm down," said the daughter. "I understand you, and I don't blame you for your decision. Maybe you'll have a good life there, and I'll spend my life here. My husband is buried here. I'll wait for Matthew. It won't be easy for him when he's released. I hope that after so many years, everything will be forgotten." Zendaya sighed, and before long, Naomi was gone. She couldn't get in. She didn't get a few points. Naomi called her mother and told her everything. Zendaya sympathized with her daughter and told her to keep her head up and asked her to call Naomi more often and report everything. After this call, she called her friend, who had also gone to enroll. But in another city, Naomi told Lillian about her failure and asked her how she was doing. Her friend cheerfully told her that she had entered a pedagogical institute and would soon start teaching. And then the girls agreed to keep in touch and tell each other everything. Naomi roomed with a girl who had also failed to get into the institute. They became friends right before the exams and got along well. The girl lived in the village next to Naomi's, and she didn't want to go back home either. Her name was Sneshana. Naomi immediately decided that it was necessary to find a job because she realized that her mother's salary would not be enough to support her. She also realized that she had to help her mother at the moment because Zendia was saving money to go to her son's house. Natasha was lucky to get a job right away. She was hired in a small store. The working day was from 8 in the morning until 8 in the evening. The work schedule was this 2 days of work and 2 days of rest. This suited her very well. However, having worked for the first month, Naomi was unpleasantly surprised as an audit was made and a shortage was revealed. The girl could not understand why this happened. Meanwhile, the store manager took the shortfall from the salaries of Naomi and her shift worker. When the girl received the money, she saw that a third of her salary had been deducted. Naomi was very upset about this, as she wanted to buy herself some boots for the fall that she had been looking at, and also send some to her mother. The girl decided that this month she would not buy a new piece of clothing, but would do it next month. Naomi decided that she wouldn't tell her mother about the shortage, so as not to upset her once again. Another month passed. They audited again and again found a shortage. When Naomi heard the amount, she couldn't stand it and cried. She couldn't understand why there were such large shortages because she and her replacement didn't take any money from the cash register. The girl's tears did not relieve the manager. The director again deducted from the salary almost half of the finances as repayment of the shortage. And then the girl announced her resignation. She did not want to work for free. Naomi was thinking about where to go to work. She didn't want to go into trade. She was terribly afraid that she would have to work one more month and have to pay half of her salary again. So she decided to try herself as a waitress. Naomi found this job almost in the center of the city in a cozy cafe. Everything suited her except for the fact that it was very far from the house where she rented a room. And soon the girl was running around the cafe from table to table in her uniform. And after a month, she received a quite tolerable salary. Naomi immediately transferred the money to her mother. A couple more weeks went by. The girl came to work as usual. She changed into her uniform and went out into the hall, where the first visitor had already entered. It was a middle-aged man in a business suit. The girl approached him and politely asked him what he wanted to eat, then looked at the waitress interestedly and mouthed, "Alfred, tell the cook that Alex is here and he'll get me something," the man said. "Okay, whatever you say," the girl said, a little astonished. She'd been working here for over a month, and this was the first time she'd seen this visitor. Naomi went in the kitchen and passed the man's request to the cook. The cook smiled and pronounced, "It's been a long time since Alex has been here. "Come to the kitchen in about 10 minutes, and the order will be ready," said the cook. Soon Naomi brought several dishes on a tray to her visitor and placed everything in front of the man. Just as she was about to step away, the stranger motioned for her to sit down beside him. The girl replied that the staff was not allowed to do that and would be fined for it. The man laughed and said that when he asked her to do it, the waitress would not be fined. Naomi cautiously sat down. She was afraid that the cafe manager would come out and scold her for it. Meanwhile, Alex was asking the girl who she was, how long she'd been working here, what her name was. Naomi answered and kept glancing at the front door, waiting for the director of the place to come in. Soon the visitor ate and asked for the bill. The girl voiced the amount, and the man took some bills out of his purse and put them on the table, saying that he didn't need change. After that, Alex got up and went to the exit. The girl looked after the man and only then at the money. She saw that the visitor had paid the bill in double. She felt embarrassed, and Naomi wanted to give some of the money and ran to the exit. But it was too late. Alex got into the car and the car started. The girl wondered who this person was and decided to ask the cook. Naomi approached the man in the white apron and asked the man embarrassedly, "Who is Alex?" she asked. "It's a friend of our boss. He owns an automobile repair shop. He used to come here to eat a lot, but now he doesn't come much," the cook said. Naomi thanked the cook for the information and went into the hall as the visitors entered. The girl had been taking orders all day, and all the time she was thinking about her new acquaintance. When the working day was coming to an end, she was called to her by the head of the institution. She was frightened and went into the man's office and asked him what had happened, and looked at the waitress with a smile and said, "You were great today. I had a friend come over to eat and you served him. He was very complimentary about you. I have a feeling you've turned his head," said the manager. "Alex gave a lot of money for the order. I should pay him back," the girl said, embarrassed. She thought that her boss was calling her to scold her for sitting down to talk to a visitor during the working day. "He's perfectly aware of how much money he left for the order, so you don't even have to worry about that. Just for the future, if Alex pays, don't take any money. It will be on the house. There will be another customer who will not be charged. You'll see him soon. He's my friend too. I unwarned." "Thanks for the heads up," Naomi said. And at that moment, the door to the office opened and a smiling Alex walked in. Lynn got up from his chair and quickly walked over to his friend, whom he immediately hugged. Then the director of the place said with a smile, "I see that you had a good vacation at the sea. And the tan looks good on you," said the leader. The girl at that moment looked at her new acquaintance and was about to slip out unnoticed as Alex asked her softly to linger. Naomi looked at her boss in confusion, and he nodded in agreement. Meanwhile, Alex turned to his friend. The workday was almost at an end. "Let me steal one of your waitresses a little earlier," the stranger said. I take it you're talking about Naomi." "No question, but only if the girl wants it. Erline, believe that now we'll leave your office, and I'll be able to persuade this beauty to let me see her off." Alex smiled. "Next. Well, try your luck," Ilon said with a laugh. Alex, after these words, offered Naomi to leave the office, and as soon as they left, the man smiled amiably and asked permission to walk the girl home. She laughed, then mumbled, "I think you've made up your mind without me. And yet, if I refuse your offer, what will you do?" Naomi smiled enigmatically, sobbed loudly, "And you'll be ashamed that such a grown man was brought to crocodile tears," Alex replied. I'm not sure you should see me off. We can just talk for a while outside the cafe," she said. "You think I'm a boy to stand outside a cafe and talk to a beautiful woman? No, let me take you to a restaurant, and we'll sit there," he suggested. "Thank you, but you really shouldn't do that. I'd rather you walk me home, but I warn you that I live far away," Naomi said, embarrassed. "No, don't worry about that. I'm on an iron horse," he smiled. Soon Naomi was sitting in the car with Alex, who was talking about himself with a smile. He was 31 years old, living alone in a one-bedroom apartment with his mother, his father having died last year. Alex himself has been an individual entrepreneur for several years. He was married at one time, but life didn't work out and divorce followed, and he didn't have any children in the marriage. And then the man revealed that Erlan is his best friend, and there is another one named Vincent at the end of his narration. Alex added that he loves fine dining and going to the races. The girl, when she heard about the running, looked at her new acquaintance in amazement. The man, seeing the surprise on the girl's face, immediately asked what unusual thing he had said. Naomi said, embarrassed, that she had never been to a horse race. Alex smiled and mumbles, "Well, then I know where we'll have our first date. I'll take you to the racetrack. I'll take you to the racetrack and we'll do something fun. We'll go this Sunday." "It'll be tomorrow," the man said. "Are we on a first-name basis yet? And Sunday is my work day, so it's not going to work," Naili replied. "Let's go with the you thing. Or we'll be acting like we're in love now. And about the job, we'll settle that now. You must have forgotten that Ilon is my friend." And with these words, the man took out his cell phone and called his friend. Alex explained the situation and then asked to give the girl an unscheduled day off. In response, the friend laughed and said he was giving us good. After the call, Alex looked at Naili and spoke with a smile. "Now you see how quickly all your problems are solved in my presence," he said. "I see," she said, laughing, and then added, "We're here. It's time to say goodbye. And it's time for you to go home too," she said. "I would still like to talk to you, but I see that you are tired after the working day, and it would be selfish of me to keep you any longer. So let me kiss your dainty hand and you can run to your room," Alex said. The girl gave the man her hand, and he touched her palm gently with his lips. Naili felt the touch and shivers down her body. She had never known such close contact with a man before. Alex pressed his lips against the palm of her hand for a few moments, and then released the girl's hand. Naili immediately felt herself blushing, so she quickly opened the car door and jumped out of the car without even saying goodbye to her new acquaintance. When the girl came to the apartment, she went to the window. She hoped that the car would still be there, but it was gone. The girl sighed disappointedly and headed to the bathroom to take a shower. Standing under the running water, she remembered her conversation with Alex, and then his touch on her palm. And then her thoughts drifted to tomorrow's date at the racetrack. And then she felt as if she'd been electrocuted because they hadn't talked about what time she needed to leave the house, and they hadn't exchanged phone numbers. As the girl bit her lower lip in frustration, she didn't know how she could remedy the situation now. The next morning, Naili got up in a disgusted mood. She realized that the date wouldn't take place because she wouldn't spend the whole day waiting for Alex in front of the entrance. She tried not to think about the fact that there would be no meeting, but her thoughts kept coming back to it, and she went to the window. The time was nearing 2 o'clock when the phone rang. Naili looked at the number, but it was unfamiliar to her. The girl answered and instantly recognized Alex's voice, which spoke in a friendly tone. "You left so fast yesterday that I didn't even have time to get your phone number," he said. "But you're calling me at the moment," she said happily. "I had to get her land back on the phone. He, like a true leader, has the phone numbers of his staff. Okay, but we're running out of time here. Anyway, you have a little over an hour to get ready, and then as soon as I get there, I'll dial you and you'll be out," Alex was saying. "All right, it's a deal." The girl disconnected the comms and laughed lightheartedly. She was happy at the moment. She liked this man very much, and she wanted to spend as much time with him as possible. She even thought that this man might be her other half in life. Soon the young people were at the racetrack. The girl watched the race and asked her companion many questions. The young man answered Naili with a smile. As soon as the race was over, the girl asked the man how often he goes running. Alex admitted that he goes in different ways and explained that it all depends on the circumstances. After the race course, young people went for a ride around the city. They talked about different topics in between. The girl at this time enjoyed the communication of the guy, and she wanted this day to not end, so she felt good at this moment. However, Alex drove Naili home closer to 9 p.m. a.m. and said he had to go because he would need to get up early for work tomorrow. The companion could hardly restrain herself from sighing with disappointment. The man kissed the girl's palm again, and she experienced the same state as yesterday. Naili came home and thought that now she would have 2 days off. She had hoped to spend those days with Alex, but the man hadn't called her once. Naili was upset and thought that apparently her behavior didn't please the guy, and so it was a work day. She came to work, and her first visitor was Alex. Naili didn't know what to think when she saw him, but he called her over and asked only for a cup of coffee. The girl complied with the man's request and was about to leave when Alex said, "Have a seat. There's a bartender, and he'd be a good waiter." "I want you to know that you won't be working here anymore," he told her. What do you mean?" the woman asked in bewilderment. "You've been on my mind for days. I don't know how to declare my love, but I'm madly attracted to you. I'll be more brief. I suggest we start living together," he told her. "But we don't know each other at all." "No, it doesn't suit me," she answered. "What kind of people are you women? You want to get all your relationships through the marriage office." Alex said with a little irritation and immediately added, But you are not a girl anymore, and you know very well that you need to get to know each other, not only in conversation, but also in bed, and only then to legalize the relationship. Alex said confidently. That's where you're dead wrong. Maybe you've had a carload of girls and you're well read on these bed scenes. I can tell you that I'm innocent in this matter, and I don't want you to use me and then throw me away like an unwanted toy, she said and blushed. Alexa looked at the girl with amazement after these words. The man obviously did not expect such an answer. In the meantime, the girl stood up, her face red with anger, and was about to leave when she was grabbed by the hand by her interlocutor and asked to sit down. Bailey grudgingly complied with the request and looked questioningly at the young man, who mumbled at the same time. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you. It's just that now, at your age, all the girls are more than aware of such delicate matters, he said with a guilty look on his face. Not everyone. I'm a walking individual for your information, she replied wryly. You've mischaracterized yourself. You're a devout virgin, and that's very rare these days. I'm amazed that such a beautiful girl hasn't had a real relationship with a guy. I understand your anger now. Good, and for a week I'll be your boyfriend and we'll see how our relationship develops. And if we're still attracted to each other, I'll make you an official proposal and we'll get married, he concluded. Did I say I was attracted to you? She asked him. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Admit that you're attracted to me. I felt it when I kissed your palm. You just don't need to be coy because it doesn't suit you. Answer me, honestly, what is it that draws you to me? He asked with a smile. Yes, but let's talk about something else, she said, angry with herself. No, I agree. The other topic is your job. I don't want my girlfriend to work as a waitress, but I'm not exactly your girlfriend yet, and I need money, and you know it, Naley explained. I'll give you the finances to pay for the room as well as the food. And don't forget that if everything goes well, we will soon become husband and wife. And I don't like it when my wife works. I want to be welcomed home by a beautiful woman in a good mood and not tired, he said. Oh, let me at least work this week, she urged him. Deal, and then not a day more, he agreed. A week flew by, Alex picking her up from the cafe when Naley was working and taking her home. The man called every day and invariably inquired how she spent her day off when he didn't come. And the girl happily informed him that she was studying a cookbook. A week later, the man made an official proposal to the girl, which she enthusiastically accepted. And after that, Naley, at the insistence of the chosen one, quit her job at her engagement. The girl initially informed her mother, who was unspeakably happy that her daughter met her favorite person. And after Naley called her friend and also told about her imminent marriage, Lillian heartily congratulated her friend and vowed to come to the wedding. Soon there was an introduction between Naley and her future mother-in-law, who lived in a 3-room apartment. Margot turned out to be a lovely woman who welcomed her at the first meeting. Naley was glad that she had a friendly relationship with her lover's mother from the first day. And then the girl got acquainted with a third friend of her chosen one. It was a young man of 27, whose name was Vincent. Alex's friend immediately appreciated the girl's beauty and told his friend that if he had known that Ilya had such a pretty waitress working for him, he would have gotten to this place much earlier than Alex. Natasha was pleased by Vincent's compliment, but her boyfriend scowled at her. When there were 2 weeks left before the wedding, the girl hinted that it was necessary to go to her mother's house, so that Alex could get acquainted with his future mother-in-law. The man reluctantly accepted the proposal of the chosen one, but he realized that it was necessary to do it. And one day, the young people went to the village. When Alex found himself visiting Zendaya, he gave an imperceptibly squeamish wrinkle. Naley happily introduced her fiancé to her mother, and then began to help her mother set the table. In the meantime, Alex was looking around. When the table was set, the mistress of the house invited the dear guest. The future son-in-law sat down and looked at the dishes with food in front of him, and then quietly, and this is considered a holiday treat, fried potatoes with mushrooms, a slice of cheap boiled sausage, pickles from a jar, and a couple of salads that rational housewives usually prepare for the winter. He said dismissively. Natasha was embarrassed that her favorite person had made such a comment about the festive table. She looked at Alex and whispered that her mother couldn't afford to eat too much. This dialogue was clearly heard by the lady of the house, and so she said, "There's no need to whisper. I can hear everything. Alex, I realize that you are probably used to other exquisite dishes, but I keep things simple. I don't keep chickens and I don't want to buy them at the store because they don't know what they're fed on. You could buy from neighbors, but they sell at too high a price. And there's one more thing. I think your fiancé told you that your brother is in jail. So I'm slowly saving my money because it's a long way to the north and the tickets are so expensive. So you, my dear, don't be angry with me for such a careless table. The woman excused herself, but she was angry at her daughter's chosen one. Mom, don't worry, it's okay. Alex is going to try your potatoes and he's going to love them. He just doesn't know how good you make them, Nayeli exclaimed and looked at her boyfriend with a serious face. Lynn realized that he had angered his companion, so he took a spoon and put some potatoes on it. And then Nayeli handed him a fork and looked at him meaningfully. Alex took the fork and ate some potatoes, and after that smiled strangely and I guess I was quick to denigrate the table. The potatoes are delicious. I'd be happy if my wife could make them as good, Alex said. After this sentence, Zendaya smiled and began to ask her future son-in-law questions about the wedding. Alex answered, occasionally glancing at his watch. The landlady noticed this and asked how long the couple had arrived. The guest politely replied that they would be on their way home in a couple of hours. Zendaya sighed sadly. The older woman had hoped that they would spend the night at her place, and she was also eager to have some privacy with her daughter, which she said aloud. Nayeli, seeing that her lover was not eating, offered him to watch TV while she helped her mother clear the table. The girl, as soon as she was alone with her mother, immediately apologized for her fiancé's behavior, and the mother smiled in return and mouths. It's okay that your young man told the truth. It would have been much worse if he had done it behind his back. Alex has spoken his mind, Zendaya said. But still, he was wrong. The daughter looked guiltily at her mother. And the tickets are so expensive. So you, my dear, don't be angry with me for such a careless table. The woman excused herself, but she was angry at her daughter's chosen one. Mom, don't worry, it's okay. Alex is going to try your potatoes and he's going to love them. He just doesn't know how good you make them, Nayeli exclaimed and looked at her boyfriend with a serious face. The man realized that he had angered his companion, so he took a spoon and put some potatoes on it. And then Nayeli handed him a fork and looked at him meaningfully. Alex took the fork and ate some potatoes and after that smiled strangely and said, I guess I was quick to denigrate the table. The potatoes are delicious. I'd be happy if my wife could make them as good, Alex said. After this sentence, Zendaya smiled and began to ask her future son-in-law questions about the wedding. Alex answered, occasionally glancing at his watch. The landlady noticed this and asked how long the couple had arrived. The guest politely replied that they would be on their way home in a couple of hours. Zendaya sighed sadly. The older woman had hoped that they would spend the night at her place, and she was also eager to have some privacy with her daughter, which she said aloud. Nayeli, seeing that her lover was not eating, offered him to watch TV while she helped her mother clear the table. The girl, as soon as she was alone with her mother, immediately apologized for her fiancé's behavior. Then the mother smiled in return and mouthed, It's okay that your young man told the truth. It would have been much worse if he had done it behind his back. Alex has spoken his mind, Zendaya said. Oh, but still, he was wrong. The daughter looked guiltily at her mother. You better tell me, how long have you known him? How well do you know him? My mother asked. About a month and a half of knowing him. I think I've known him all my life, my daughter replied with a smile. Why do you want to marry him after such a short period of time? Are you really pregnant? The old woman said in a frightened voice. Mom, we haven't had anything but a couple of kisses. I even live in a rented apartment. We agreed that everything will happen after the wedding. And we both want to live together. That's why we're in a hurry to get married. I'm only sorry that my brother will not be at the wedding, but he knows about everything and wished me happiness. Since you and Alex are doing well, I'm happy for you, and with a pure heart I bless you. She hugged her daughter. Soon the young people left the village. On the way to the city, Nayeli told the chosen one that he had behaved unkindly towards her mother. Alex furrowed his eyebrows and said with irritation that he hadn't expected to see such a shabby dwelling. The girl glared angrily at her interlocutor and asked him not to talk about her mother's house in that tone from now on, and looked at his lover and then laughed softly while mumbling, You're so good in your anger I could kiss you right now. Don't pout at me, he said. Her time flew by and the wedding day came. There were many people from the groom's side that the girl didn't know. On Nayeli's side, there was only her mother, a friend, and the girl with whom she rented an apartment immediately after the wedding. Nayeli went to live with her husband. The girl was eager to start settling in at the new place. She wanted their apartment to be cozy and comfortable. Naili did not forget that her husband is very fussy about food, so she often looked at the cooking site to find an interesting dish and cook it to her husband for dinner. Sometimes she had questions about cooking, in which case she called Ivia's cook and consulted him. So the year flew by. The time was approaching when the girl wanted to enter the institute again. She told her husband about it the day before. Alex looked at his wife in surprise and asked why she needed to chew on the granite science, until he perplexedly uttered in response, "I must have some kind of education. What am I going to do for the rest of my life?" said the girl. "Honey, stop your wild fantasy. Other girls dream of living and doing nothing, and you're talking about studying. You better always look the way you look. You know how nice it is for me to go out with you. I hear people say you got a diamond, and that's all they say about you. And Vincent is still pining for you. He can't get over the fact that he didn't meet you before me," Alex said. "Sometimes I feel like you didn't marry me, but my looks. But let's talk seriously about school. You don't think it would be pleasant for me to sit on your neck and not have money for extra expenses?" Naili resented him. "You'll have a job soon. I have some ideas, but it's still in the works. I meant what I said about studying. It's all nonsense. You better study a cookbook. You'll need it very soon," he recommended. Naili realized that she would have to forget about her studies. The young woman did not want to have a conflict with her husband about it, so she decided that she would stay at home for the time being and be a good wife and a good housewife. Another 6 months flew by. During this time, the girl's mother went to see her son in prison. Naili's friend married a businessman. The friends still called each other often and told each other the news. Lillian often asked her friend when she was going to give birth to her first child. Natasha had to keep lying to her that it was not yet time for that, although in fact she dreamed of becoming a mother, but her husband was against it. He said that she had to get on her feet financially and then think about children. The man even forced his girlfriend to take birth control pills for the sake of it. Well, a few more months passed and Naili was sitting at home watching a women's program. And then they showed a happy mother who had given birth to triplets. The young woman involuntarily wept with emotion, and at that moment her husband came home from work. He looked at her wife with surprise and asked what had happened. The young woman wiped her tears and mumbled, "We've been living together for 2 years now, and I want us to have a complete family, meaning us and our child." Naili began to say, "But you're doing that again, aren't you? Do you need it? After all, you'll have a hard time yourself later with diapers, nighttime sleep deprivation, and all that kind of stuff." Alex listed, "I know all that, and I'm willing to go to all that trouble. It's just that you're at work all night, and I'm bored," she wailed. "And in your spare time, learn to knit. It's very good. You'll have a job, I promise you," he said. The girl realized that it was useless to talk to her husband about children. So she decided to get pregnant by trickery. A young woman stopped taking birth control. After a while, she realized that she was pregnant. To be sure, Naili visited the women's clinic, where the doctor congratulated her on the soonest possible addition to her family. The young woman flew home, overflowing with happiness. Now she thought about how to tell her husband about it. Naili waited for her husband from work and tried to think of every possible way to tell the news to her husband. And when Alex came home, she said in the hall, "I'm pregnant. I went to the doctor today." The girl said, "No, could this happen? Didn't you take the pills?" The man wondered. "Yes. I asked the doctor the same thing, but he told me that there are failures in the body and the pills do not give the proper effect, which is what happened to me, the wide wife. Then it is necessary to terminate the pregnancy," the husband said dryly. "Not anymore. The time limit is not suitable for this." "Don't worry, sweetie, we'll manage," the young woman said affectionately. "Of course we'll manage. You're going to be blown like a cow and you won't be able to fit into any dress," the man said irritably. Time moved on. Naili's pregnancy proceeded without complications, and soon the young woman gave birth to a baby girl who was named Amelie. Naili was very happy about this event, for now she was not only a wife, but had become a mother. As the years passed, Amelie turned 3 years old. Naili thought about sending her daughter to kindergarten. She wanted the child to have contact with her peers, and this is what the young woman told her husband. The husband was not against it, and agreed with the opinion of his wife. And as soon as Amelie went to kindergarten, Naili talked to her chosen one about work. Alex didn't like such conversations, as he was fine with his wife sitting at home waiting for him after a day's work. However, this time the beloved was persistent in this matter and told her husband, "Like it or not, I'm going to look for a job. I have to beg you for money all the time, and I don't like it," she said. "No, come on, you're never going to talk to me like that again. I've told you more than once that I'll get you a job. Be patient for another year. I've got some money saved up and I want to open a restaurant business. I've seen how Island's made a fortune in this business. He's already opened a restaurant. I'm still in the same place," he said. "But you don't know anything about this business," her wife said, bewildered, and then added, "It's better to invest in something you know how to do. In your case, it's an automobile repair shop," she advised. "I'll understand in time, especially since Arlen, as a friend, promised to help. I didn't just tell you to learn the cookbook. You'll be an administrator in the restaurant we're going to open," he said. After this conversation with her husband, Nayli's spirits lifted. She told her mother and then her friend. She also told her mother-in-law, whom she often saw. Margot always welcomed her daughter-in-law and was happy when Nayli visited her with a granddaughter. And once again, when the daughter-in-law came to her mother-in-law's house, the landlady turned to the young woman. "Your mom and I call each other a lot. And when we talk about you, she often calls you Nayli, but doesn't that offend you?" My mother-in-law asked. "Not at all. My mother calls me so fondly. It's very pleasant for me when she says it. Then I'll call you Nayli too. You're like a daughter to me. You come to see me more often with Amelie because I'm bored. And my son and his business are always busy," she sighed sadly. "Okay, Mom. I'll try to get out more often. And I'll talk Alex into coming to visit more than once a month," Nayli said. A couple more years passed and Alex opened a restaurant. Nayli was as happy as a child because now she would not have to sit at home. However, her husband said that at first he would hire an experienced administrator and she would have to learn from him. Nayli did not argue with her husband, as she was not used to crossing her husband during the years of married life. It had been about a year. The restaurant was barely bringing in any income. Alex realized that if things went on like this, he would simply go bankrupt. The man began to come home in a bad mood. He understood perfectly well that it was necessary to change the concept of the restaurant business. The wife saw how the chosen one was freaking out about the restaurant and often told him to turn to a friend for help. Alex responded by saying, "Island advises to give this place a major overhaul and completely change the menu to one that is easier to prepare. Let's say I agree with the menu. It's easy to do. But the renovation, it requires a fabulous amount of money. Where will I? You could take out a loan, though." "Exactly, that's what I'll do," he explained to himself. After a while, Alex took out a large loan from the bank. The restaurant was closed for renovation, which lasted more than a month. New furniture and equipment was purchased. Nayli watched her husband's enthusiasm for the restaurant. The woman hoped that after all these innovations, the place would start generating income. And then the day came when the place opened. There were many announcements in the newspaper that there was a new restaurant in town with an excellent menu for every taste. Alex immediately invited his friends to celebrate the opening of the place. The man expected a lot of visitors that day and hoped, like his wife, that now the revenue would increase many times over. A week has passed since the restaurant opened. People's attendance was low. Alex was furious about it. He just didn't know what to do. The man was freaking out, and Nayli didn't know how to help her husband. She had already gone to Elias secretly from her chosen one and asked him how to fix the situation, and the spouse responded. "I told Sasha from the beginning that this event was a failure. You see where the restaurant is located. The elite don't live there, and rich people won't go there on purpose. When Alex first wanted to open a restaurant there, I told him right away that it should be either a canteen or a diner. But you know your husband, if he sticks to his guns, you can't move him," my friend wailed. "Maybe you could talk to him again. You should see how he's so angry. I can't look at him without crying," Nayli explained. "My words mean nothing to him, and you realize that too. My advice to you is to try to persuade him to sell the restaurant so that you can pay off the loan," said Erlan. Okay. Thanks for the advice," the girl replied. Nayli had just mentioned the sale of the restaurant and immediately provoked a flurry of indignation from her husband. He yelled at her for the first time and rudely told her to mind her own business. The young woman, after an unfortunate conversation, took her daughter and almost crying went to her mother-in-law's house. When Nayli came to Margot's house, she told her husband about the quarrel. The landlady asked her daughter-in-law to calm down and offered to spend the night with her. The daughter-in-law refused, as she knew that her husband would not approve of such an act and told her mother-in-law about it. Margot volunteered to call Sana and immediately dialed him. "Alex, I'd like Nelly and Amelie to stay at my place tonight," the woman said over the phone. "What kind of freaky stuff is that? She is a married woman and should be with her husband." "I'll come and fetch her myself," said the son threateningly. "Me, son, I know you're having business problems, and you're taking all your anger out on Nataka right now, so let her stay with me for a day," Margot insisted. "I'm on my way out." The man muffled and disconnected the phone. Alex was already at his mother's in 40 minutes. He went into the apartment and, without embarrassing his mother, threateningly told his wife that he would not allow her to take the quarrel out of the house. Haley said quietly that she had come to her mother-in-law's house to talk about her problems. Alex responded by saying, "What goes on in our family should be between us, between you and me. You don't bring mothers into this. Do you understand?" He said angrily. "Yes," the young woman said fearfully. After this incident, Nelly realized that she did not know her husband completely. She even, somewhere in her heart, became afraid of her husband. The woman dreamed that her life with her husband would return to its usual course when they enjoyed every day. After some more time, Alex returned from the restaurant in a gloomy mood. And then, as luck would have it, he had a loan to pay, but he had no money. The income from the car repair shop did not cover all the costs, and the revenue from the restaurant was absolutely minuscule. The man received frequent calls from the bank demanding repayment of his loan debt, and when another call followed, Alex answered, and when he hung up, he turned to his wife. "It's decided. We have to sell the restaurant before it's too late. I haven't been able to pay my staff their salaries for 2 months now. There's no point in continuing this business if it doesn't bring in income," he complained. "I am very glad that you have come to this decision," replied the wife affectionately, who was actually delighted at her husband's words. Alex soon sold the restaurant. The proceeds from the sale were used to pay off a loan from the bank. As soon as it happened, Nelly sighed calmly, because now her husband was no longer nervous about the fact that his business had failed. However, the young woman still secretly wanted to work from her husband, but she realized that her husband would suppress her desire at the root, and then Nelly found a way out. The girl began to earn money on the internet. She performed simple tasks in social networks, earning a small income. 2 months had passed since the sale of the restaurant when Alex came home dejected. Nelly asked her husband what had happened. The chosen one, trying to hide his irritation, answered that he had been to Aaliyah's house and that things were going well, and the wife was surprised at her lover's words and said, "You should be happy that your friend is doing well in that regard. Don't you realize that I also want to ride a horse, not to pick up scraps from the table?" Alex resented him. "Are you jealous of Aaliyah?" suddenly asked Nelly, who was surprised by this circumstance. "That's a tough question. Maybe there's envy in the back of my mind. But we still need the extra income. It's time to move into a more luxurious apartment. We should buy a 2-bedroom apartment. Don't you realize that I also want to ride a horse, not to pick up scraps from the table?" Alex resented. "Are you jealous of Aaliyah?" suddenly asked Nelly, who was surprised by this circumstance. "That's a tough question. Maybe there's envy in the back of my mind, but we still need the extra income. It's time to move into a more luxurious apartment. We should buy a 2-bedroom apartment and sell this one. The only way out is to open another car repair shop," he said. "But where will you get the money? Are you going to take out a loan again?" my wife wondered. "No," the man replied categorically and added, "I have no desire to get involved with banks anymore. I'll think of something," he said. After that conversation, a month passed, and one morning, as her husband left for work and Nelly turned on her laptop and was just about to take a social media assignment, the phone rang. The woman picked up the phone and heard the excited voice of a neighbor who lived across the street from her mother. She reported that Zendaya had been taken to the hospital with a heart attack. Nelly gave a startled gasp and immediately started calling her husband. As soon as Alex answered, she quickly told him the sad news and asked him to take her to the hospital. The spouse asked with a little irritation, "And how far are you going to go there?" Husband said, "Until mommy is better. I can go with Amelie or leave her with your mom. It's up to you," Nelly. "Only with my daughter I'll let her go to the village. Don't burden my mother with a child," Alex said dismissively. "As you say, darling Hugh," the girl answered and smiled. She understood from her husband's words that Alex was still jealous of her, and that's why he didn't want to let her go alone. A short time later, Naile was already sitting beside her mother, who was lying in a hospital bed. The young woman stroked Zendaya's arm and said affectionately that everything would be all right. The sick woman looked at her daughter and told her not to worry. Naile nodded and thought that she should call her brother and inform him of her mother's illness. The young woman didn't even realize that Matthew's call would bring trouble. A few days passed. Naile was on her way home from the hospital to her mother's house. 2 police cars passed her. The girl wondered at the same moment what had happened in their village. If so many law enforcement officers had arrived. To her amazement, the cars stopped near her mother's house. Naile approached the uninvited guests and inquired, "What happened?" she asked. "We need Zendaya," the uniformed man said glumly. "She's in the hospital, and I'm her daughter," the girl said. "Matthew escaped from prison and traumatized our employee in the process. We're looking for him. Was he here?" Officer asked. "No. He wanted to check on his mom, so he did that," the young woman said faintly and felt herself getting unwell. In the meantime, the interlocutor asked to open the house in order to inspect it, and at that moment, a signal sounded over the radio. The man answered, and after a few moments, he said that the operation to track down the fugitive criminal was over as Matthew had been caught. Naile then went into the house, where she wept desperately. She was well aware that her brother had escaped only to visit his mother. Matthew was afraid that his mom wouldn't wait for him to get out of jail. Naile also realized that now her brother would get more time for escape. She also knew that her mother must not be told because Zendaya, with her heart condition, might not be able to bear the news. Some time passed, and then Naile's mother was discharged. Zendaya asked her daughter to stay with Amelie for a while longer. Naile could not refuse her mother's request, even though her husband called every day to ask when she would be home. It had been a few days since Zendaya had been discharged. Alex knew about it, and once again, when his spouse asked him to stay at his mother's house for one more day, he passed out and came to the village himself after a while. The man politely greeted his mother-in-law and ordered her to go home. Naile realized that her husband was angry with her for his long absence and that he missed her. Soon the family returned to the city, and life went on as usual. But after a month, when Naile returned from the village, she began to feel uncomfortable, her body itching all the time. This did not escape Alex, and he told his spouse. She'd been living in her mother's old hovel, so she must have gotten scabies. "Go to the doctor tomorrow," he said. Naile didn't contradict her husband in return, as she actually felt disgusted. She went to an appointment where the doctor prescribed a bunch of tests, and soon after, the doctor told her that she had diabetes mellitus. I gave the doctor a stunned look and asked, "But we didn't have anyone in our family who had this disease." The young woman wondered, "You said yourself that you've been in a lot of trouble lately, so you got diabetes on a nervous basis. Now you should go to the hospital for a full examination," the doctor recommended. Naile returned home depressed. She didn't want to lie in a hospital bed. She informed her husband about her illness, who was not thrilled with the news. Alex immediately told his wife not to hesitate and to go to the hospital. Uchard sappered. The woman nodded in agreement and said, "All right, darling, but you'll have a hard time now because you'll have to take Amelie to and from kindergarten," she said. "Don't worry about it. I'll figure something out," he replied. Soon Naile was admitted to the hospital. She was there for about 2 weeks. When she was discharged, the doctor gave her a prescription and explained how to take the medicine. And the doctor also advised the girl to worry as little as possible. Naile would have been happy to live without worrying, but then her daughter had an attack of appendicitis. The girl was urgently hospitalized. Naile was worried about her daughter's condition, and as soon as Amelie was discharged, she felt sick and went to the hospital again. It has been 7 months since Naile found out about her illness. During this time, she had put on a little weight because she was taking hormones. If some acquaintances told the woman that the extra kilograms only added charm to her statue, Alex caustically remarked that she was slowly turning into a cow. After these words, Naile cried, and her husband, to smooth out his harshness, "No tears. I'm just asking you not to gain any more weight and to watch your weight. Keep a notebook and weigh yourself every day. And now I want to tell you a happy thing that in a week, I will have a second car repair shop, and you and I will soon move into a 2-bedroom apartment. We've already found a buyer for this apartment," Alex said. "But where did you get the money?" The chosen one asked, stunned. "You should know the places, but in the meantime, start stowing things slowly," he smiled. And before long, Alex had already opened a second machine shop, and then the family moved into a 3-room apartment. Moving to a new place of residence was a big challenge for Naili. She was nervous about anything, that she would not make friends with the neighbors, that they would live too far away from her mother-in-law, that her daughter would have to go to the 1st grade, and she would not have time to get the child ready for school due to the move. And as a result, the woman ended up back in a hospital bed. And when her husband came to check on his spouse, she asked him, "Let your mom help you with Amelie. You don't have enough time for household chores with your business. Invite Margaret to stay with us while I'm away," she said. "I'm not going to call my mother, especially since she's leaving. I'll handle this situation myself, and Amelie will be fine. Don't worry about her," he urged Naili. "Where is this going?" "She didn't say anything to me, really. I haven't called her in a while with this move." Naili didn't understand. "Please don't bother your mom at this time. When you're discharged, I'll take you to her myself." "It's a deal," he insisted. "I won't mind you, whatever you say, sweetie," she agreed meekly. Naili checked out after a while. She arrived home and noted with pleasure to herself that the apartment was in order. The woman turned to her husband and spoke affectionately, saying she was proud of him. Alex, in turn, handed his chosen one a notebook and told her to start writing down the calories and how many she had consumed during the day. Naili gave her husband a dumbfounded look and said he had lost his mind. Alex stepped aside and then gestured to the mirror and offered his wife to look in it. The woman complied with her husband's request and looked at her husband again, and then seeing that the life companion was perplexed, muttered, "You put on a few extra pounds that don't make you look good anymore. I don't have to explain this to you, obviously." He resented me. "I don't understand something. Do you love me, or do you only care about my figure?" Both. "So let's stop this pointless dialogue," he decided. After these words, Naili locked herself in the bathroom and cried for a long time. She hated herself for being overweight and decided that she would take care of her figure without feeling sorry for herself. Only after these thoughts, the woman was able to calm herself down and left the bathroom. The next day, Naili got up early in the morning while her husband and daughter slept, then weighed herself, recording her weight in a notebook, and then she did her morning exercises. When she did her exercises, she mentally encouraged herself that she was doing it not only for the sake of the man she loved, but also for her health. Afterwards, Naili saw her husband off to work, took her daughter to school. She began to study the calorie chart. Legends, the woman decided that she would cook for herself separately and only from low-calorie foods. She made a menu and put it in a prominent place in the kitchen. Several days passed. Naili continued to exercise every morning and cook for herself separately from the household. The woman believed that everything would work out and she would be able to regain her former figure. And when a week passed, Naili stood on the scales and was horrified to notice that during this time she lost only 260 grams. She was upset by the result and decided to talk to her mother-in-law. That woman called Margot, but the caller was out of range. When her spouse came home from work, she told him that she had tried to call her mother but was unable to. Alex then looked absent-mindedly at his beloved and informed her in a calm voice that his mother had gone to live in another country, and looked dumbfounded at her husband and utters, "No, come. Why didn't she say goodbye? Why didn't you say anything to me?" She was indignant. "It's a long story. Be patient. Mom will get settled and she'll call you. It's just that she got a boyfriend and he suggested moving to his homeland, and she agreed. And Mom doesn't have to answer to us for her actions. She's an adult," Alex said, as if Alex had cut him off. "It's not that Margot has to answer to us," the young woman exclaimed indignantly, wiping away tears with her hand. And then she went on to say, "That's not the point. We got on well with her, and she left without a word to us. It's not nice to her relatives." "That's what I'm talking about now," she said with sadness in her voice. Calm down. I explained to you that she had a good reason for doing what she did. And let's just drop the subject. And actually, your husband came home from work hungry and he wants to eat like a wolf," said the husband. Naili had no choice but to silently walk to the kitchen and set the table to feed her spouse. The woman was doing all this automatically, as her thoughts were preoccupied with her mother-in-law's behavior. She could not believe that Margaret had done such a thing. Naili was offended that her mother-in-law had done that to her and Amelie. A month had passed since Naili had been trying to lose weight. She decided to find out how much she would weigh at the end of the month. The woman stood on the scale and was confused. She saw that after all her efforts, she had lost only 1 kilogram. Nayeli did not believe the result at first and quickly went to the nearest health clinic where she asked to be weighed. However, the nurse confirmed the result that Nayeli had on the scale at home. The woman walked back in despair because she had exhausted herself so much, often malnourished, watching the family devour baked chicken or eat ice cream. Nayeli tried to leave the kitchen at those moments so as not to tempt herself, and all this suffering was for the sake of 1 kilogram. She was about to give up on losing weight when the idea occurred to her that she should visit a nutritionist to find a diet that could be used with diabetes. And now Nayeli has a new menu from the doctor. The woman starts diligently again, a new attempt to lose extra pounds. She strictly adheres to the menu and also exercises for 15 minutes in the morning. And exactly 1 month later, Nayeli gets on the scale. The woman, seeing the result, runs to the kitchen and angrily tears off the menu sheet, as she has lost 720 grams of weight over this period of time. When her husband came in that day, her spouse complained to him that once again her month had been wasted, as she had lost very little weight. Alex grinned and arrogantly said she wasn't trying hard enough. Nayeli felt her resentment rising and wanted to reply to her husband, but she immediately changed her mind, as she realized that the conversation could end in a scandal, and she did not want that. The next morning, Nayeli saw her husband off to work as usual, took her daughter to school, and called a friend. She told her friend about her problem and that her relationship with her husband was deteriorating because of it. Lillian listened to her friend and advised her to run away from such a lover. Nayeli, through her tears, replied to her interlocutor, "It's easy for you to say that, but then where am I supposed to go? Back to my mom's village. And look at the village men, all of whom are drinking themselves to death. Yes, it's not even that. It's that I love Alex," she said, crying to her friend. "You sound like your mom, who had to take a beating from her husband because of her love. What more advice can I give you? I don't know what to say in this situation. For me, I've seen pictures of you and Amelie, and you look pretty good. I don't deny that you've put on a little weight, but you've become more feminine." Lillian tried to encourage her friend. "Thank you for listening, and I'm sorry for putting my problems on you. Say hello to your family," Nayeli said. "Don't get lost and call me in any case. Everything is possible in our life. So if there are any financial difficulties or anything else, call me right away," said her friend. Some time passed. Nayeli stayed at home with her daughter and helped her with her lessons. Alex came home and told his wife that this weekend he would not come home alone, but with a rich client. The man asked his spouse to prepare a holiday meal while telling his wife that it was extremely important to him to convince his guest to come to his workshop. The chosen one did not ask unnecessary questions and promised her husband to set a luxurious table. It was Sunday, and Alex came home with a man who was dressed in an expensive suit. The head of the family invited the guest into the hall, where the table with numerous dishes was set. Alex looked at the treat and smiled. He was pleased that his wife had honored his request. Meanwhile, the guest also appreciated the dishes and said, "Your wife is a great cook." And after these words, the man looked at Nayeli, who was standing modestly aside, and the guest clucked his tongue and said, "Your chosen one is good in every way," the man said. Alex clearly didn't like the client's last sentence and sternly asked his spouse to leave them alone for a while. And then the landlord brought a bottle of white wine and suggested that we start the conversation by drinking 100 grams. The guest smiled broadly and nodded in agreement, and Nayeli was in the nursery with Amelie at the time. She was unhappy that her husband had kicked her out of the room like a common servant. After a while, the woman heard her husband calling her in an inebriated voice. Nayeli hurried into the hall and saw that the guest and the chosen one were already quite drunk. And the woman asked what her husband wanted her to do, and he in turn smiled skeptically and asked her to clear the table, while adding, "You can collect the leftovers and then take them to your mother in the village. She will be pleased with your gift of leftovers," he laughed. Nayeli did not answer her husband, as she realized that it would be useless at the moment. She decided that she would talk about it in the morning, and as soon as the next day came, the woman turned to her husband. "Well, what do you think you're doing? Okay, you insult me, but what about my mother?" She said, "And you are becoming like a village cow. That's why I say such words to you," replied the husband. "But then why don't you divorce me if you hate me so much?" she asked. "You're a good cook, and don't forget, we have a daughter with you. If you want, I can take away your motherhood and go back to your village," he said wryly. "You haven't woken up yet. How can you not be ashamed?" She shouted with tears in her eyes, and hurried to the other room so that she wouldn't see her chosen one. Only now she realized that her husband did not put her in anything, and here, for some reason, the woman remembered her mother-in-law. Nayeli didn't know what had made her think of Margot. 2 weeks passed quickly. During this time, Nayeli realized that the relationship between her and her husband had grown cold. The woman tried to keep the marriage intact. She even visited a witch doctor to help her get her husband's love back. Nayeli performed a mysterious ritual, which had no effect. Alex could still easily insult his wife. Leshwin was in despair. And one day, after her husband called her another name, she decided to tell her mother the truth about her life with her husband. Nayeli had kept everything from her mother until then, as she didn't want to worry her too much. She was afraid for Zendai's aching heart. Soon Nayeli was sitting at her mother's house and tearfully told her about her relationship with her husband. The old woman listened to her daughter in silence, and as soon as she finished speaking, she said, sadly, "If things are so bad with Alex, why don't you leave him?" She asked, "I still love him. I just think we need to wait a little longer and things will work out with him," her daughter said. "You see, that's how it works. At one time you asked me why I was living with your father when he did such a bad thing to me, and I told you that I loved him. And now you're telling me the same thing. Daughter, believe me, Alex will not change and you just have to bear with him since you love him so much," her mother explained to her. Some more time passed, and Nayeli realized that the former family relationship could not be restored, and she also learned that her husband had a mistress on the side. The woman realized that it was necessary to leave her spouse, and so she reported it one day. When Alex heard about it, he laughed and said that she could go to all 4 sides and forget about Emily. Nayeli looked with horror at her husband and realized that this man was not joking and could make the words he had said come true. Nayeli decided to turn the conversation in another direction at the same moment. She asked the chosen one about his mother, and as soon as Alex heard the question, he involuntarily shuddered. The woman noticed this movement and was alarmed by her husband's reaction. In the meantime, the husband hurriedly replied that his mother would call soon. Alex's answer did not satisfy the wife, and she decided to go to her mother-in-law's old address. Soon Nayeli was standing on the landing where Margot used to live. She stood pondering, and then suddenly the door opened and her mother-in-law's neighbor came out. Finally turned to the pensioner at the same moment. "Oh, I came to visit Margot and they told me she had moved out," Nayeli said. "Wait, you're her daughter-in-law. Didn't your spouse tell you that he put his mother in a boarding house?" The neighbor wondered. "Alex told me that my mom and her Bio went to live abroad," Nayeli said, perplexed. "Nay, it's nonsense, really. Come to my place, and I'll tell you something," she suggested. The 2 women entered the apartment and walked into the hall. Nayeli sat down in one of the armchairs, and the pensioner sat on the sofa next to her. The landlady said that recently Margot had been suffering from blood pressure and had begun to give up a lot. The elderly woman was afraid to stay alone, and then Alex offered her mother to live in an expensive boarding house for a while. Once can breed, and soon her son put her there. Nayeli, listening to her neighbor's story, was stunned to hear the news. He immediately asked the older woman, What about the apartment?" "There are strangers living there now," Nayeli said indignantly. "As Margot told me, her son would rent it to her while she was in boarding school. But as I found out later, the apartment was sold, not rented. That's all I know. So you tell me, where is Margot now?" "I guess you took her back to your place," the neighbor asked. "Yes," Nayeli lied, and she wanted to be alone to think about it, so she added, "I'm sorry, but I have to run. School is ending and I need to pick up my daughter." "Thank you for the news," the woman replied. When she left her neighbor outside, Nayeli sat down on a bench and thought. She didn't understand why her mother-in-law, if she was in the boarding house, hadn't called her. It all seemed very strange to the woman, and she decided that she would get to the truth on her own. And soon Nayeli began to wait. About a month had passed and Alex's birthday party was coming up. Nayeli knew very well that her husband's friends and people he needed would come to the party. The woman bought groceries beforehand to prepare a festive dinner, and so the day came. The guests, headed by the birthday boy, were celebrating his birthday. The time flew by unnoticed, and now the end of the celebration was approaching. Alex swaggeringly called his wife to him and sarcastically said, humiliating her in front of his face, "Fatty, pick up the leftovers from the table. You'll spoil your village mother." The guests laughed, except Vincent, who still liked Nayeli. He turned to the landlord and noticed that his wife was in great shape. Alex was about to say something to his friend when Naili interrupted him, turning to Vincent. Thank you for standing up for me, but now I can fend for myself." The woman turned to her husband and smiled coldly, saying, "You're right. I'll pick up these scraps and feed my mother and yours, which you refused." The woman said bravely, "What the hell are you talking about?" Alex said fiercely. "Let me tell you and our guests what a respectable man you are in the community. I think you told your friends that your mother went abroad with her boyfriend. Only it didn't happen. You fooled everyone. And now it's time for everyone to know the truth. By the way, your mom should be here in half an hour to congratulate her diligent son, and I'll tell about you by then." Naili began to talk. "Shut up or I won't be able to take care of myself," Alex said menacingly and started to get up from his chair. But he was immediately precipitated by Vincent, who uttered, "Don't boil, Alex. You know very well that your mother was like a second mother to Eli and me, and it's important for us to know the truth." "Let Naili talk," the man said. The woman glanced gratefully at Vincent, then turned to her husband. She saw that her husband was looking at her with fury. Naili was well aware that at the moment she had to tear off the mask of hypocrisy from her chosen one in public. However, she did not feel sorry for her spouse because she had suffered from his humiliation lately, so she began to speak with a smile. "We all remember very well that Alex needed money to open a second auto repair shop. He didn't want to take a loan and he couldn't lend such a sum. That's when Alex turned to his mother and asked her to sell the 2-room apartment, promising her that he would buy a 1-room apartment instead. Margot refused her son, telling him that the apartment would be a future gift for her granddaughter's wedding. The son did not like his mother's answer, but he kept silent at the time. And then I went into the hospital, and at the same time Margot's health became bad, and she appealed to her son to have Alex take her in. However, Alex told his mother that he had an emergency at work, and he would not be able to properly provide care for his mother. And in return, he offered her to live in an expensive boarding house. The old woman believed her son, thinking at the time how caring her child had grown up. In the meantime, Alex slipped his mother papers, told a lot of fairy tales, and the elderly woman signed documents that her son could take over the real estate. That's how Alex took possession of Margot's apartment. And after that, he put his mother in a so-called boarding house. Naili paused. The guests sat in silence and waited for the continuation. The woman looked at her husband, who looked at her with contempt. Naili subconsciously waited for her husband to apologize and ask her not to say anything further. Seeing Alex's gaze, the woman finally realized that her husband was in no way ashamed, and she continued her story. When Alex pulled the scam, he told everyone that my mama had gone abroad. It seemed strange to me at the time, but I trusted my husband wholeheartedly. And for some time, I waited for my mother-in-law to settle down in a new place. But as time went on, Margot never showed up. And I turned to my husband about it, and most amazingly, my husband was embarrassed by the question about my mother. That's when I felt something was wrong. And I went to the address where my mother-in-law lived, where I accidentally ran into a neighbor who told me about the boarding house. I was astonished by my husband's lies and did not tell him anything. I started looking for Margot on my own. I visited several boarding houses, but there was no woman in any way. I was in a stupor as I did not know how to find a mother-in-law. I started to revisit boarding houses, and in one of the institutions I was advised to look for a relative in a nursing home. That's where I found Margot. You should have seen how happy she was to see me. The old woman was crying tears. My mother-in-law told me about the documents, how she had signed them, and that her son did not visit her at all. I asked her why she had not come on her own. And at the same moment I realized that I had asked a stupid question because Margot could hardly move. Naili paused and looked at the guests. There was silence in the room. Everyone was shocked by the story. The woman was silent for a while, and then she looked at the people in the room and said, "But that's not all. I was waiting for someone to ask why Margot didn't call because she has a cell phone." Well, there's a little story here too. It turns out that Alex had thought of everything. He told his mother that he accidentally dropped her cell phone in the water and it no longer works. Alex promised his mom he'd buy a cell phone, but as you all know, he didn't. One more thing I'd like to say is that Alex put his mother in not the most decent nursing home. As much as I hate to say it, not all institutions have decent staff. It just so happened that Margot ended up in such a nursing home. Naili stopped talking and turned to her husband. She gave him a cold look, then smiled and began slowly clearing the rest of the food off the table. The guests watched the woman in a daze. Naomi took her time with her actions, realizing at the moment that she had shocked everyone with her story. And when only the bread remained to be put away in the bag, the woman turned to her husband and said softly, "Here, my dear husband, I have collected the leftovers from the festive table, and it is this food that will go on the table of your mother and my village mother," she said. Vincent stood up at that moment, and he looked at his friend contemptuously and said, with a slight anger that he had not expected his friend to do such a thing. Alex remained silent in response. He had nothing to say to justify himself, and then took the floor and pronounced to the landlord, "What have you done, Alex? Margot is your own mother and you did this to her." Vince was right. "We didn't expect you to be so mean." The man wanted to continue talking, but Naomi interrupted him. "Hold on, I'm sorry to interrupt you halfway through, but I just want to let you know. You and Alex are friends, but he was jealous of you, so he decided to open a restaurant. But his business failed. He couldn't get over the fact that you were doing so well as an entrepreneur. And then Alex decided that if the restaurant was not lucky, he would open an automobile repair shop. He did, but only in what way? Now it's clear to everyone what money Alex used to buy the machine shop. It is also clear that he used the money to buy a 3-room apartment," the woman explained. Then the doorbell rang. Naomi exclaimed that the dearest guest had arrived and rushed to open the door. Soon Margot entered the hall, leaning on 2 canes, followed by her neighbor. Then Zendaya appeared, followed by Naomi. Lagat approached her son, who at the same moment lowered his head. Alex didn't want to look at his mother, and the older woman put her hand on the man's head and stroked him quietly. Then she asked Vincent to help her sit down next to her son. The man hurriedly helped the woman to sit down. Then did Margot turn to her son. "Well, hello, son. I came to wish you a happy birthday. I'm sorry I didn't bring you a present, but I did. Thank you for what you've done. I won't blame you. There's no point. There's a popular wisdom that the law of the boomerang has never been repealed. Still, I didn't want that law to affect you. What more can I say to you? And I have nothing more to say to you. I only feel bad for you in front of your friends, your wife, and Alice. I must have missed something in your upbringing that you could treat your mother like that. And now, with your permission, I will turn to your wife, because it is thanks to her that I'm sitting in front of you now." Margot turned her head to Naomi and smiled affectionately at her. Then the old woman beckoned her daughter-in-law to her with her finger. The daughter-in-law approached her mother-in-law and squatted down in front of her. Margot stroked the girl's head and said softly, "I've already thanked you for everything, but I want these people to know what you've done for me." My mother-in-law began to say, "You don't have to say thank you. I did it for your sake, because I love and respect you," Naomi replied with tears in her eyes. "Don't cross an old lady, my dear. You are very clever." Here the woman paused and looked at the guests and then addressed the audience. "My sister-in-law found me in our big city. She went through more than one institution before she found me. But that is not the most important thing. Naomi took me from the nursing home and took me to her mother in the village. And then she told us how her husband humiliated her in front of the guests. That's when we all decided together that we should give my son a present when he insults Nataka again. A couple of days before the holiday, she brought us to the city and brought us to my former neighbor, who had taken us in for the time being. We had to tell her the whole truth, because the lies would come out sooner or later anyway. The neighbor was shocked when she found out. She thought I was living with my son. Margot was silent. No one in the room wanted to say anything. This went on for about 15 minutes, and the silence was broken by Alex, who stood up and said, "Angry, why are you making a monster out of me? Do you know what it's like when your best friend gets richer every year? Or do you know what it's like when my wife disobeys me and has a child against my judgment? Do you even understand what it is like when your spouse gains pounds every day and does not look after herself at all?" The birthday boy was indignant. "Stop talking nonsense." Vincent interrupted Alex and immediately continued talking. "You were not prevented from developing your business in your own direction. And as far as I know, Alan discouraged you from opening a restaurant. He warned you right away that it was not the right place. And about Emily, what I can't understand is that you're not happy that you have a beautiful daughter. And I'll say one more thing about your wife. She is an extraordinary woman, and you should be proud that you have such a wife," the man said. At that moment, Vincent was touched by Naomi's hand and asked him not to continue, but to let her speak. The man smiled at the woman and said that he was a gentleman and would always give way to a lady. Naomi thanked Vincent with a look and turned to her spouse. "You and I are done with the leftovers. Now let's put one more fat point on my fatness. If you're annoyed by my figure, I can reassure you that you won't be seeing it from now on. You and I are getting a divorce, And don't even try to scare me about my daughter staying with you. After your words, I realized that Emily, really you do not need. You just did not want to pay child support after the divorce, and you do not care about the child. And I can also add that everything will be great in my life, and I will find a man who will love me as I am now. And at the same moment, the woman was interrupted by Vincent. He apologized to Nayeli for that, and said that there was already such a person who would love her. Nayeli smiled. She knew her husband's friend had a soft spot for her since the day they met. In the meantime, Vincent continued to speak. You know I have feelings for you. That's why I'm suggesting in front of everyone here that you get divorced as soon as possible and consider me for a new spouse. And believe me, I like your figure even better now than I did before. And I promise you'll never hear a hurtful word out of my mouth. I won't replace Amelia's father, but I promise to be a good friend. Now it's up to you, Vincent said. Nayeli was embarrassed at these words and did not know what to say. Her mother came to her aid and told her that if she had fallen out of love with her husband, there was no point in keeping the family together. And then the older woman added that Vincent's offer should not be accepted at once, but should be considered. Nayeli listened to her mother and nodded in agreement. She was just about to say something when Alex spoke. He bluntly said he would not grant a divorce under any circumstances. The man at the same moment, the chosen one, looked at him and said with astonishment, "Now, and so you hate me? Why would you want to fight a divorce? I can also tell you that I don't love you. It's all burned out. It happens. So you don't have to act like you don't know who you are right now," Nayeli blurted out. "I've already told you there will be no divorce," the spouse replied stiffly. Vincent intervened in the conversation between husband and wife. The man turned to Alex. "You know, I really wish these were the days of the duel. I'd love to do it now. From now on, you know very well that our friendship is over. From now on, I won't even shake hands with you. I'll pass you by without noticing you. And as for the divorce, you can shake the air with empty words, but the divorce will take place because your wife wants it. And if you try to intimidate Nayeli, believe me, she has an advocate who is willing to go to great lengths to make this woman happy in life. It's your own fault for what happened. Nayeli loved you with all her heart, and you knew it, and the people around you knew it. But you mocked her and trampled on her love. So be a man now and just step aside and let Nayeli get on with her life." Vincent spoke up and turned to the woman he loved, smiling encouragingly and asking her not to worry. Nayeli smiled in return as well, and thanked the man again for his support. Vincent then turned to Margot. He said, "You shouldn't be ashamed of your son in front of us. Alex is no longer a child and should be responsible for his actions. And I also suggest that you, as well as Natasha's mother, live at my dacha. There is fresh air, heating, in general, all the conditions for paradise. And now I suggest that we all leave the owner of the apartment. Let him be alone with his thoughts. I think he has a lot to think about." Vincent suggested to Nayeli that he gather the most necessary things. The woman looked at the man in surprise and asked where she was going to live. The man laughed and offered him his apartment. Nayeli smiled and replied that she had not yet accepted his proposal of marriage, so there was no hurry. Vincent smiled and mouthed, "You'll think about it at my house. And you know very well that I will behave like a true gentleman. If you don't accept my offer, we'll find you a separate place to live," he said. Nayeli looked at Vincent gratefully for the umpteenth time, and suddenly replied that she was willing to be the man's wife. Those present in the room cheered and applauded wildly, except for Alex, who stepped back to the window and turned away from everyone. Alex was approached by his mother and spoke softly. "It's your son's fault. Now my motherly advice to you, think about your behavior. It's never too late to change for the better. If you realize that, you know where to find me, either at Nayeli's mother's or at Vincent's cottage. I wish you'd find the strength to realize what you've done with your life." "That's all I wanted to say to you, son," the woman said to him, turning around and walking with the others toward the exit. It was evening and the loud sounds of Indian melodrama could be heard in the house. The cheerful music sounded like a mockery. The wife of Camila's son, the lady of the house, had been doing chores late into the night. Now she was tearfully scrubbing the floors of the spacious four-room flat, and the music that played when they became husband and wife played in her head, and the words of the registrar came to mind. "Do you, Jennifer Johnson, agree to become the spouse of Nicholas Jones?" Why did she say yes? Gave in to her fiancé's entreaties to live with her mother. She put on a wedding ring, and that took her into a dark world of despair. Nicholas, indulging his mother in everything, didn't believe his wife. The miracle had not happened. Husband was not going to support and protect her in a difficult moment, and mother-in-law was dodgy, weaved intrigues, loaded unnecessary work, slandered on the daughter-in-law. Not the difficulties of family life frightened Jennifer. Offended Nicholas' misunderstanding, the injustice of life. And today she scrubbed the floors for the second time, only because the mother of her husband did not believe her that she had already cleaned the whole house in the early morning. In the evening, Nicholas supported his mother, not understanding why his wife is stubborn and cannot do simple housework. Finished with the cleaning, Jennifer quietly snuck into the bathroom and closed. Here she could let her feelings out, rest from the family burden. The well-appointed flat, unlike her rural home, was a joy to bathe in at any time, without heating the cooker. It was a small consolation to Jennifer. She missed the peacefulness of the countryside, her yard, the warmth of communicating with the villagers. Picking up the water, with a snow-white cap of foam, she sank into the tub with pleasure. Once again, she remembered the carefree minutes of her unmarried life, and then the acquaintance with Nicholas in such a sudden wedding. Jennifer had fallen in love with the kind guy on a motorbike at first sight. Nicholas then came to visit his grandmother in the village. One day, driving through the village, he saw a marvelous girl with a black braid down to her waist, a gentle look, and a basket in her hands. It was a marvelous vision, as if a forest nymph had come out of the pages of books. She was walking with a basket of cloudberries, which she had been given by a kind-hearted grandmother for a letter from her son. Nicholas stopped, asked to treat him to a strange berry, which he had never seen before, so the relationship began. The guy surrounded his beloved with care and invited her to live in his luxurious 4-room flat. Jennifer immediately disliked Camila, the city's spoiled woman, who did not like her son. Not one of her son's girls, she had worn out her cunning, and here was a gift from Nicholas, a simple girl from the village, an orphan from Kazan with no family and no tribe. Jennifer buried her parents long ago and lived poorly, alone. She worked as a postmistress, but at the insistence of her husband, she resigned and moved to the city. Why? What for? There was a persistent knock at the door. Camila's irritated voice brought her out of her blissful memories. "Jennifer, you're at it again. How many times have I told you not to shut the door, and how many times can you pour water? You haven't brought a penny into the house yourself. She's a madam, but she takes a bath every day. Open the door immediately, I have to go to the bathroom. I have a scheduled beauty treatment." "Mum, what's wrong?" asked Nicholas, who came running at the screams. "Your wife did not wash my room, I had to do it myself, and I have a backache, I feel sick. The medicine is in the bathroom, I've been trying to persuade her for an hour and she refuses. And she was rude to me. Talk to your wife." "Why are you sassing me again, Mum? It's been 15 minutes and I've scrubbed the floors in every room." "No, look at you, you arrogant liar. Get out of my sight." Camila shoved her sister-in-law viciously in the side, causing her to almost fall over. Jennifer, Nicholas said coldly, "Stop arguing with your mom and show her some respect, please. If it's not too much trouble, Your Highness." He turned and walked away, stomping angrily. Day after day, her husband's mother nagged, making up tall tales, complaining to Nicholas about her deteriorating health, with such an ungrateful daughter-in-law. Jennifer baked pies, cooked French and Italian dishes, studied new recipes, watched videos on running a household. Nothing helped. The mother-in-law's main goal was to drive her daughter-in-law out by any means necessary. Kick her out for no reason, not her status. Nicholas is a prominent lawyer, and her late husband was a prosecutor. There were old connections, important people, not the last people in town. Camila was embarrassed by Jennifer, who didn't know how to handle cutlery, dressed gray, plain, and refused to go to salons. Unwillingness to do her hair and manicure pissed her off. When guests, the mother of the husband politely, but coldly owed her Girowetzia daughter-in-law, telling her not to show anyone in front of her. A year of hard, tedious, joyless life passed. Jennifer took a job in a shop near the house as a clerk. Her husband stopped giving her money at her mother's request. At work, the daughter-in-law rested from the endless reproaches, but at home it became even worse. Now Camila reproached her daughter-in-law for her unwillingness to do household chores. "My dear, you are always at work, and my husband must be fed and looked after. I'll talk to my son so he won't let you get out of hand. Mom, I do everything. I cook in advance. All my things are in order. I clean up morning and night. What's the fashion in which you insist on insisting on quitting your job? I'm ashamed you're working as a saleswoman with a husband like that. I'm ashamed of you. Because of you, Nicholas doesn't even leave me any money for the household, and I still have a house to keep in the village to pay the bills. Oh, Kazan orphan, you don't need to spend our money, you know that. Nicholas buys everything for the house. The arguments upset Jennifer. Later, the mother of the spouse reprimanded her son, as boorishly communicates his wife does not hear her advice. Jennifer was deeply hurt by Camilla's words that she was ashamed of her uneducated daughter-in-law. It was painful to remember why she never went to college. Jennifer was the pride of her parents. She graduated from high school with honors and planned to enter the medical academy. But a month after graduation, her parents were in a car accident on their way back from the city. Father died in the hospital, never regained consciousness. Mom fell into a coma. For 6 months, Jennifer traveled to all the hospitals, begging, hoping to save her mother, gave on the paw, begged to appoint an operation. The situation was hopeless. No one could help. Mom never woke up again. Having buried her mother, Jennifer was left an orphan. To live somehow, she worked part-time in a shop, then found a job at the post office. The road to the academy was closed. There was nothing to pay for her studies. Jennifer spent all the money she had saved on hospital and funeral expenses. The hard fate did not bother her mother-in-law. She could not allow a homeless girl from the village to run her house. Camila found a new way to get rid of her daughter-in-law. Nicholas, she told her son, we need an heir. Why can't your wife get pregnant? Mom, it's been so little time. Perhaps it's too soon to talk of children. My dear, a child will help reconcile us all. It's such a blessing. I'll be so happy if you give me a grandchild. The cunning mother-in-law cried and hugged her son. Okay, I'll talk to Jennifer. However, I agree. It's up to me. In the evening, Nicholas pleased his wife with his desire to have children. He didn't say anything about his mother's request. Camila went to extreme measures, which became known later. Jennifer rejoiced at the possibility of becoming a mom. A child could really soften her husband and her life would be much happier. She had lived with the dream of having a child since her wedding, but it had not been possible to have children. Another 6 months passed. Jennifer cried as she held the test strip in her hands, disappointed again. Fear settled in her soul. Her mother-in-law would scream, her husband would support her mother and slam the door angrily. For the 2nd month, he was less often at home. He stayed late at work, met with his mates. Camila was pleased. She had finally broken up the young people. There was one last step to take. One day, Jennifer entered the room and saw Nicholas, who sat with a twisted face of anger. When he saw his wife, he swung round and hit her in the face. Ungrateful bitch. He shouted and threw a packet of pills at her. How dare you lie to me and Mum? Explain to me, what are these? They're pills, but I've never seen them before. Crying with shaking hands, Jennifer read the instructions. They were birth control pills. The weight of the past months of endless humiliation, of frustration, came over her in an instant. She collapsed without feeling, no longer wanting to live and breathe in this cruel world of absurdity. Nicholas, though angry at his wife, felt guilty, could not bring her to her senses himself, called an ambulance. Camila snidely looked at the pills and indifferently escorted her daughter-in-law to the hospital. Mum, why did she do this to me? Bitterly complained Nicholas, complaining to his mother. I told you. The hunchback will be corrected by the grave. Do not dare to forgive such a thing, divorce. You can't do that, Mama. I promised her she'd be happy, but she lied to me too. I'm going to get up early in the morning to visit my wife and have a quiet talk. 3 days later, Jennifer was discharged. She took the bus home. Nicholas did not meet her. He was at work. Waiting for her at home was a suitcase and a note from her husband informing her that they were getting a divorce. Her mother-in-law was triumphant. She kicked Jennifer out without letting her wait for her husband. She was a country bumpkin, and she was still a country bumpkin. You shouldn't have messed us all about. Get out. I can't see you, you snake. You wanted to separate me from my son. It won't happen. Get out. I said get out. I want you out of here right now. The mother-in-law shouted after her, unwilling to stop her anger and triumph at the same time. In the evening, Nicholas learnt that his wife had left. "Mum, why didn't Jennifer wait for me? How dare she leave me? Why didn't she say anything?" "Calm down, son. It was her decision." Camila was careful not to mention the note she had written, copying her son's handwriting. "But how? She didn't even leave a note. You two haven't been getting along for a long time. That woman is not good for you. Who's that redneck going to give birth to you? And without children, there's no family, it's an omen. If she did, who would she give birth to? There's no reason to breed without a native simplicity. Look for a wife of status." Having got rid of her daughter-in-law, Camila felt over the moon. She had achieved her goal. It was her plan. For a year, she drank Jennifer a decoction of wormwood, convincing her that this tea was good for women's health. So she hoped to make a young, healthy girl infertile, and then planted pills on her. Nicholas was upset, he thought. Jennifer hadn't forgiven him for the slap. With a longing in his heart, he walked around the room where he smelled her perfume. Sitting down on the bed, he went through the pills. A suspicion crept into his soul. The packets were intact, every single pill in place. Perhaps Jennifer hadn't taken them. He remembered hundreds of moments when his wife had cried and complained about her mother and he hadn't believed it. The load at the opening struck his heart with the pain of irretrievable loss. He himself, with his own hands, had destroyed love. There is no forgiveness, but Jennifer, his beloved, without whom so lonely and dreary will be able to understand. He would rent a flat for her, and tomorrow he would go to the village to beg forgiveness. An Indian song was playing loudly in the next room. Camila smiled blissfully in triumph. She was more at ease when others were suffering, but her carefree life would not last long. One day she would receive a letter that would turn her whole life upside down, change her character, teaching her to be compassionate, to empathize, to do good. And now she was far from even a moment's regret for her dastardly deed. Nicholas did not immediately get out to the small town where his wife lived before marriage. He had to see the client's case through to the end. A week later, he took a week's holiday and went to see Jennifer. As 2 years ago, to go decided on a motorbike to return the former feelings. He did not inform his mother about his departure. He was offended by her. He tried to avoid talking to her. Camila looked anxiously at her dejected son, hoping that time would heal him. She was already looking for a worthy match for him, an obedient socialite who will distract her Nicholas from sad thoughts. His mother repeatedly tried to talk about divorce, but the son waved away, avoiding an answer. Nicholas settled everything, packed his rucksack secretly from his mother and left the house. It was a clear spring day. Johnson happily set off on his long-awaited journey. Soon he would meet his beloved, whom he missed incredibly. It seemed to him that just today their family would open a new page of life. They would be happy, for he loved Jennifer so much. The road was slippery from the past rain. Prudently, Nicholas wore a helmet, but the wheels could fail. But it did not stop the desire to impress his wife, to revive pleasant memories, move the voice of reason. Johnson accelerated, feeling a rush of energy, freedom and lightness on his soul. It was a 2-hour non-stop drive to the small town. The road went without tarmac, not a living soul. After an hour and a half, Nicholas carelessly slipped into the oncoming lane. At that time, a tractor appeared from behind the corner. It was too late to brake. Nicholas jerked the wheel to the left. The motorbike rammed the bushes, crashed into a tree. The brakes did not work. The wheels began to slip. Johnson was thrown out of the saddle, and he rolled down the slope from the road. He was unlucky with the driver. The driver of the tractor was ex-prison inmate Kevin Reed, who would not want to be investigated again. He braked, hoping to save the arrogant driver, but Nicholas showed no signs of life. So Kevin took his belongings, got back on, and drove off, leaving the motorcyclist to die. In the village, he said nothing about the accident, not even a twinge of conscience. It was an accident. The fault of the tractor driver was not really his fault, and humanity, unfortunately, is inherent in few people. The mother missed her son the same day. She found out that he had taken a week's holiday and did not answer the phone. What a stubborn man, he went to his simple girl. Did she cast a spell on him? Camila knew where her daughter-in-law lived before her marriage, but she was not going to her. She decided that she would bear it for a week, and then she would see. She called her mother in the village and asked if her grandson had turned up. He hadn't. Her son's phone became unavailable, and after a week he still hadn't returned. She decided to go to the village herself, got to her mother, whom she rarely saw and communicated with even less often. The news was shocking. It had been a year since Nicholas had visited his grandmother, called Mrs. Cassandra. He hadn't come to the village a week ago, not yesterday, not the day before. "Do you know Jennifer, the postmistress?" Camila asked her mother. "She's your sister-in-law, your dear. Have you gone completely out of your mind?" The mother was silent, shaking her head. Something sly slipped into her gaze. "Jennifer hasn't been here in a year. She's moved in with you." "How?" "She's been divorced from my Nicholas for a fortnight. What better place to go than back home?" "She hasn't been here. We're next door to each other, 2 houses down." "Camila, don't make a mess. I know you." "Where did you put the kids? They ran away from you, didn't they? They did the right thing." "I raised a bad daughter. You don't come here, you don't help your mother. If it wasn't for Nicholas, I'd be all alone." "Mama, you never understood me, and I couldn't stand that simpleton. What use is she?" "I'm sorry, but I was raising my son. It was hard. He's back on his feet. He hasn't forgotten anyone, and he's my son. I raised him that way." "So you survived, Jennifer? I see you're a simpleton like me, or you've forgotten. What a character you have, Camila. I'm ashamed to have raised a daughter like that. Tell me what happened. Why did the kids run away from you?" "My son went to Jennifer's. I guess his motorbike isn't in the garage." "Where did it go?" "I don't know. I'm so sad." Camila couldn't hold back any longer. She clasped her hands and wailed. "Sonny, where are you, dear son? It's my own fault. My own fault. Let's go to Jennifer together. Maybe they're lurking there, living there. I'll tell you the address, but it's no use. I won't go. Go yourself and don't come back to me alone. It's easier and calmer. You go yourself, I'll call you if the children are found." Camila went to the address, but no one was home. She knocked. She went to the neighbors, but it was the same. Neither Jennifer nor her husband had been there for a year. Nobody had come or knocked. Camila went to the old habit to collect information in the town, in the shop, at the post office, at the club, but Jennifer as in water vanished. With a heavy heart, she returned to town, the trail broken. Acquaintances, friends didn't know where her son was. He never showed up for work. He didn't sign any resignation papers. Nicholas was irretrievably missing. The last desperate step was to file a missing persons report. Another year, she padded the thresholds of government agencies, visited her mother in a small town. There was no trace of her son. Later, remorse seized Camila. Nothing could dull the pain of loss. It was impossible to believe in the death of her son. So she lived lonely, remembering the moments when everyone lived together, though not always friendly. Let him live with that simple girl, as long as he was near. Now the house was hopelessly silent. Camila cried at the window all day long with an absent look, but she believed that her son would return. The story by the roadside had a sequel. Nicholas survived. He was rescued by the family of a healer from a small town in the neighborhood where Jennifer lived. It was a very small town of just a few houses. The only people left in it were old people. For all the necessary food things, so small things for the household drove and went to the neighboring town. On that fateful day, the daughter of the healer went to the shop on the road. First she saw a mangled motorbike, and a little further away she noticed Nicholas without feelings. What a grief, he must have crashed. What a handsome man he was. I sighed and shook my head. The girl, her name was Catherine, was trained in first aid, often helping her mother treat people. She checked and realized that the boy was alive, but it was not customary for healers to call an ambulance. They lived in the village as one family. In case of grief, they helped each other. So Catherine ran off to get help. Johnson was taken to Chloe's house. It wasn't good. The victim hadn't been conscious for a week. They searched around the motorbike, but they didn't find any ID, phone, or belongings. They were taken by a resourceful tractor driver, so that there would be no trace of them at all. He just took the things, but he burnt all the papers and even his passport. There was a man, and he's gone, missing. The unknown man came to his senses on the 8th day. A black-eyed beauty with a thick red braid was sitting beside him. When she saw that the sick man opened his eyes, she jumped up and cried out, "Mummy, he's awake, come here." A not young but stately woman came in, bent over him and held his hand. "My dear, you'll live now. Where did you come from? What's your name?" But Nicholas was so weak that he could not speak. He shook his head, trying to say something, but could not utter a word. "Catherine, go and get him some broth and tea. I guess he can't talk. Maybe he'll write something later." The man thought with horror that he couldn't remember his name. Moreover, who he used to be, who he even was, he doesn't know. He frantically fumbled around, trying to get up, mumbled and fell again without feeling. Later, he was given tinctures. The men brought his motorbike, collected parts from it, and wanted to identify the man by it, but somehow forgot about it. It's no use, they thought. After all, the village had hardly developed. A kind man, we need him. If he doesn't remember his former life, it's his fate. Catherine nursed Nicholas, fell in love with him without memory. He was also charmed by this extraordinary, caring girl of fabulous beauty. Over time, Nicholas began to talk a little, turned out to be skillful at all hands. Quickly learnt to build, put a log cabin for his native Catherine, equipped it, and so they lived together. Vague pictures of the past came to mind, but the whole did not add up. With some secret excitement, he looked at the cloudberries, and then everything was eclipsed, did not go further memory. Nicholas was no longer himself. He was given a new name, Norman, the papers of a long dead man, buried and not registered as dead. Norman Carter was born. For a long time he couldn't remember where he came from, who he worked for, or why he was on that road. Camilla Jones was still waiting for her son's return. Her maternal heart told her he was alive. It had been 5 years since his disappearance. Nicholas had been reported missing. The bleak days had been hard. It seemed as if nothing would happen until she died, but one day she received a letter. A very strange message came from Jennifer's address in a small town. There was only one word on a white sheet of paper, Cloudberry. What the hell is this? The mother-in-law shook the envelope, nothing more, shone the leaf on the window a blank. I told you she was a mad fool. The same day I left for the village. The first thing I did was to go to Jennifer's house. She didn't remember her son's story about how he met his wife. This time the door to the house was open and empty inside. She walked through the rooms, as if no one lived there. Dust all around, cobwebs in the corners, the smell of a long uninhabited house. But in the midst of this emptiness, a brand new portrait of a sweet little girl stood on the windowsill. Camilla shuddered and cried, Nicholas's bottomless blue eyes staring back at her. Grabbing the portrait, she read the inscription at the bottom, Cloudberry on the back, Caroline Jones. It couldn't be that. How could it be? For 5 years I've been on my own, with my granddaughter growing up next to me. It was Jennifer, the wicked witch. She's the reason I lost my son and hid my granddaughter. What a bastard. Camilla howled as she looked at the photograph, stroked the face that bore the features of her precious Nicholas, and then sat down and wept. Tears of remorse poured down in streams. It was she herself who had driven the good girl away. She had given her wormwood to keep her from being a mother. But what a cruel fate. Jennifer's daughter was given to her, and everything was taken away from her. It's karma. Jennifer was wrong to do that. It was getting dark. There was no electricity in the house, so this was not where her daughter-in-law lived. Camilla stood up from the floor 5 years older, her heart bleeding. She walked to her mother's house and the door was open, wide open. No one inside, empty and desolate. She had not visited her mother for a year. She had given up hope of finding her son. She had stopped calling. Her mother had died without her. There's no one now, alone in the whole world. I'm sorry, Mom, I'm sorry. Where are you? Camilla clutched her temples and fell senseless. She woke up in the dark. There was a cold smell from the door. She had to find her granddaughter and Jennifer to find out what was wrong with her mother. There was no electricity in the house. She went into the kitchen. Like when she was a child, the candles were in a drawer. I lit them, put a glass, and sat alone in the semi-darkness on the chair where I sat as a small, carefree, mischievous girl 45 years ago. The glare played on the wall. The silence was incredible. The world froze here in an instant, in no hurry, no sacrifice required. What happened to her soul? The city had taken everything good out of her, made her a cruel and wicked girl. And it's not square meters, water from the tap that you need to stay alive. That's the feeling when you realize you're a real person. Only a small town can reveal the soul. Camilla should have been born again, sitting alone on that chair, in the semi-darkness, which her mother had not thrown away because she had waited all her life for her daughter's return. In that moment, she came home with her whole soul. Grief helped her to realize the emptiness of her meaningless life. The clock ticked, as if counting down the time of rebirth. Night fell and business had to be postponed until tomorrow. Camila unraveled the prim bump on her head and braided her hair. She woke with the dawn in the morning, anxiously opened the wardrobe in her former room, going through the dresses she had worn when she was young. This was where she had lived until she got married and met a promising guy studying to be a lawyer. Later, they left the small town and bought a one-room flat in the big city. The clothes were too small, no doubt. I slammed the doors, went into my mother's room, opened the wardrobe. Weekend dresses hung in rows. Everything was in perfect order. Even the perfume hadn't weathered off. By old habit, her mother walked around the village only in skirts or dresses. Camila stood in indecision. She dared not take her mother's things. It was not clear what had happened. It was bad enough to wear the things of the deceased, but she would certainly be told that her mother was dead. Emboldened by this thought, Camila chose a plain, straight-cut monochrome dress and changed. The trouser suit she'd arrived in was angrily tossed into the dresser, as if a frog had taken off its skin, transforming into a beautiful maiden. In her 50s, Camila was a slim, beautiful woman, but the strict outfits, dark things aged her. Now she was happily fidgeting in front of the mirror, as if rejuvenated a dozen years in this simple old-fashioned dress. It was time to make inquiries, stock up on groceries, put the house in order. I went outside, dizzy from the marvelous country air. I stood enjoying the ringing silence. I went into the neighboring house. I thought how I hadn't thought to go to the house since the evening. The old owner was milking a cow. She looked in, startled to see Camila in her neighbor's dress. "Hello, Mrs. Kimberly." "Don't you be sick," too, the old woman muttered quietly. "Tell me, where's Mummy?" "It's fate to die with a daughter like that." "No way." "You, my dear, don't deserve to know the truth," said the neighbor harshly, turning away. "Tell me, I beg of you, is she alive?" Mrs. Kimberly stood up, picked up the milking pan, and strode to the porch. The silence dragged on. "Now, you get out of here. I've nothing more to say, and don't come here and say anything more. It's up to you to decide how you want to live your life. Michael, get Blanca out of here and get this one out of here too." She mumbled under her breath, but Camila heard her. She didn't get anything else. Michael, the neighbor's son, passed by without a glance and didn't speak. Camila stood there for a moment, crumpled, and then walked angrily away. She passed 5 other neighbors, 2 of whom had already left the small town. The houses were padlocked, the vegetable garden abandoned in high summer, everything overgrown with grass. The other 2 neighbors she knew couldn't explain anything. She said her mother had moved away. She didn't say where. But the small town was thriving. A new shop had opened. People were farming, putting the cattle out to pasture. The hospital was working. There was a poster on the local notice board advertising a holiday home by the river. Inquiries from the inhabitants led nowhere. Camila decided she had to start her life over. It was no coincidence that she received a strange message. A portrait of her granddaughter, changing will earn her forgiveness. Fate would have mercy on her. She decided to start with a temporary move. The flat in the city was on the alarm system. But she didn't have to worry. But she didn't take any things with her. Her old tastes seemed unacceptable for the town. Camila Jones went round the shops, bought suitable outfits for work and everyday life. She spent the rest of the evening tending to the household, going through the kitchen utensils, all in a deplorable state, some chipped, some old, the floors cracked, the wallpaper unchanged for years. Now she realized what a poor state the house was in need of repair. She had not thought about it, having left her mother alone in the village. She only threw in a piece occasionally, sending money a couple of times a year. How did mother live here alone was unfathomable, and a bitter thought befell the neglectful daughter. What if her son had left her so alone? Would life have been easy? Her heart was troubled. How could she do that? No, she deserved everything that happened to her. You can't be selfish, thinking only of yourself. Things are going to be different now, she proclaimed into the void, wiping away her tears. She cleaned the house until evening, made a list of things to buy in the city. I thought I'd go to the local office to find out when my mother had last paid the light bill. It turned out that it was only like 3 months ago, The bills were paid. The landlady herself came to visit. Camila was wary, but the payment was accepted, and in the evening the electricity came on, illuminating the rooms with a cold, dim light. In the morning, Camila left for the city. She drove her car to the village, leaving it at the gate for the night. But after thinking a little, she went to her neighbor's house, sneaked into the house, knocked. It was open. The house was clean, spacious, everything was in order. It seemed that her son had done his best to repair the house, and it stabbed her heart that she herself had never helped anyone. The angry landlady was about to send her away. "Mrs. Kimberly, I'm sorry I've been mean. My bad." "What a sly fox. I won't tell you anything. Just so you know. You're right, it's too early to forgive. Mother, I must find my son and granddaughter in front of them guilty. So why did you come to me? Go back to your place. Nobody needs you here. I decided to live here for the summer. I was invited," she muttered quietly, remembering about the letter. "What do you want from me?" "I'm going to town, to the hardware store. I want to make repairs to my mother. I came here to ask if you need anything to buy." "Buy them all. Have you decided?" Mrs. Kimberly grinned slyly. "It's out of the goodness of my heart. What can I do for you?" "Oh, my dear, I can't pretend to be angry for long. Come to me, I was babysitting you while your mother was at work." To her amazement, all Mrs. Kimberly's sternness was gone. She hugged Camila, wiping away her tears. "I'll write you a list, and I have to ask my son. He wanted to go into town too. Maybe he'll come with you." Mrs. Kimberly's son was a little older than she was. As children, they were friends and quarrelsome, annoying each other with mischief. At 15, Michael left his mother, going to school to study electrician, and then returned here to find a job, got married, made an extension to the house. We started a household and lived together. How painful it was for her mother to see it. Her daughter got married and never came back. "Hello, Michael." Camila finally found the right words. "Hi, Meanie." Michael smiled, remembering her past offenses. "I'm going to the city. Your mother has made a list. Maybe you should come with me too? You're not going to kill me?" The irony was uncalled for. When she was a child, she asked to drive his motorbike, but she lost control, drove off a bridge into a river. They were rescued, but the motorbike was banned. Michael didn't forgive her and stopped communicating altogether. He'd do little things, like scare me with caterpillars or drop off mice. "Don't worry, I've been driving for over 20 years. When my husband gave me a car for my wedding, I learned right away." "Did you bury your husband?" "My mother told me. Sorry to remind you." "It's all right. Where's your wife?" "She died. She went out on the ice in the spring. She wanted to rinse the laundry. It got sucked in. She was not saved." Michael said quietly and turned away. "I'm sorry, I didn't know. It was a long time ago. Let's go to town. Wait, I'll change." While Michael was getting ready, a girl with a bag over her shoulder ran up to Camila. "Hi, do you live in this house?" "Yes, I'm here to see my mother. Here's a letter to this address. Please sign here." "Thank you, girl. Come and visit if you have time. I've got to go. Goodbye." Camila Jones turned the envelope round. It had her mother's address on it, but it was addressed to Camila. She opened it anxiously, wondering if someone was trying to teach her a lesson or take revenge. On a white sheet of paper in large letters was the single word wormwood. Camila shrieked, dropped the sheet. Jennifer learned that by the evil machinations of her mother-in-law, she could have been left infertile. How could that be? Maybe she peeped on her while she was in the kitchen making her daughter-in-law's herbal tea. "What are you standing there with your mouth open?" Michael asked, approaching. Seeing the leaf, he picked it up, reading the strange message with amazement. "What is this nonsense? Did you get a letter? Your interlocutor is obviously a little verbal." Michael laughed, but quickly stopped. Seeing that, Camila stands in a daze with a lost look. "Let's go." The road was silent, not even music on. Michael was dozing in the passenger seat. Then he opened his eyes and blurted, "Your mom came to see us a week ago." "What?" Camila braked sharply, which almost bumped Michael's forehead. "Hey, take it easy. Drop me off. I'd rather walk. You're not very good at driving." "I'm sorry, but why didn't Mrs. Kimberly tell me? I was so worried. Do you know what I've been through? I buried her in my mind. Don't shout. What's going on? Camilla said it quietly and pulled over to the curb. I don't know. They were whispering in the kitchen without me, and my mother forbade me to talk about it. Don't ask me anything. I'm going to go. We're here. Wait. I'll find out for myself. Don't say anything. Let's go. The shopping trip took longer than they thought. It was getting dark by the time they'd filled the boot in the back seat. Camilla persuaded Michael to spend the night in her flat. He walked round the rooms for a long time with a look of amazement. It's like a museum. What a place. You must have been crazy to live in the country. The living room alone is as big as your mother's house. Yeah, Mom's living in squalor and her daughter's living in luxury. Michael, I know what I'm talking about. Come on. Here, you're going to sleep on the couch. Let's go. I'll feed you. Caviar and lobster. I'm coming. Ugh, you furry hedgehog. She playfully replied with a childhood nickname. Camilla thought that it was unbearable to live alone. Caring for others gave her energy. Michael was pensive, looking at his hostess with alienation. The evening was not going well. The guest was obviously hiding something from her, but Camilla Jones did not question him, more him. The letters were leading her to some goal, like stages of a test she had to pass. Michael got up in the early morning and got Camilla up. He would not leave his mother alone for long. He had to help with the chores. They came back when the neighbor had already put the cow out to graze. Why didn't you come back yesterday? Every hour counts. I can't cope on my own, and it's scary to spend the night alone. She grumbled, then smiled and invited me to tea. We unloaded the shopping. Camilla had brought a set of pots and pans as a present for her neighbor. She knew that pots and pans were the trouble with village housewives. Mrs. Kimberly sighed but accepted the gift. The hut was clean, cozy, and warm. The hostess brewed tea, put a wicker with lambs, jam, and honey. The quiet morning in the village was peaceful. Camilla took a sip of tea and looked at the hostess with bewilderment. Something bitter. It's bitter for you. Others must have been sweet, remember. Is it with wormwood? She choked and coughed up tears. And you eat it with cloudberry jam. It won't be so bitter. Mrs. Kimberly said with a sly squint. Camilla shuddered. Tears ran down her cheeks. She jumped up, ran out without looking at anyone, and ran away. Earlier it was impossible to be pierced by this. Nothing troubled her heart. She did harm to her daughter-in-law with a light hand. But now her conscience, which had been sleeping for many years, awoke and stirred her soul. She sat on the bench at the gate and could not calm down for a long time. There were no more thoughts, only tears flowed unrestrainedly, washing away the blackness that lived in her soul. Granddaughter Caroline was to relieve the bitterness of life. A little while later she went to sort out her things, then fiddled in the kitchen until evening, took everything out to the veranda, painted both the ceiling and the walls, having changed her mind about wallpapering. She just cleaned the floors, and contrary to village tradition, laid a carpet. The old kitchen furniture was falling apart, in need of repair. She persuaded Michael to help, who willingly patched the holes. Camilla looked at Michael with admiration. He's a good man. In his 50s and early 50s, he's still a handyman. Michael laughed at the carpet and told her to paint the floors. Help me set up the furniture. It's up to me to decide what to do. City folk, you're all cuckoo. Oh, for crying out loud. All right, I'll keep the carpet for now, and I'll paint the floors later. You're going to throw that carpet away in 3 days. We'll watch you when you're on the river. I bought a Hoover you've never even heard of. Michael looked at Camilla in a friendly way, jokingly pushing her, looking playful. Oh, Michael, stop pushing me. We have grandchildren to nurse. God didn't give me grandchildren. He said bitterly, my son is a border guard. He won't show his nose. It's been 10 years since we've seen each other. Son, I don't know anything about you. I don't know about anyone. I only cared about myself. After my mother died, he cut off all contact with us. He left like a ghost. He writes letters once a year. He settled down all by himself. He got a flat far away from us, but he didn't have a family. In an outburst of pity, Camilla hugged Michael, and he suddenly responded, embraced her and kissed her on the lips. Camilla was taken aback. Have you eaten too much white wine in your old age? You know nothing. And I was in love with you as a child, and you city crazy first attacked me. Me? I don't need any more help from you. I'll see you around. Michael turned and walked away. He muttered to himself. That's right. You're the one who's trying to teach me a lesson. My what? Wait, spit it out. You can't talk. Michael walked over to Camila, kissed her again, and left quickly. Camila Jones stood in a daze for a minute, then sat down to drink tea in the newly transformed kitchen, the surroundings sparkling clean. Michael had hung the chandelier she'd looked out for in the house, the pendulum clock on the wall, adding to the coziness. Only the old furniture spoilt the overall impression. So the furniture was worth updating. You could order yourself new sofas, a lounge, an armchair, a bed for Mum. How easy were these things to do now? Why hadn't she thought of Mum's comfort before? For a week, Camila made repairs, ordered furniture, while waiting for delivery, painted ceilings and walls. For more than 10 years, she had been sitting on the sofa with soap operas, and now she was working, impressing the neighbors with unprecedented vigor for a mature woman. In the evenings, her back and arms ached, but Camila did not complain. She was patient, glad that God had given her the strength for such an important work. During that week, Michael visited her more than once, helping with the repair of wardrobes, rearranging furniture. Camila got used to him. Communication became warm. More and more often he sat up late, remembered the past, made plans. Michael refused to talk about her mother. At parting, he hugged her like his own, but he did not allow any liberties, kissing her innocently on the cheek. On the 8th day, the renovation was finished. The old kitchen sets were dismantled for firewood. For her mother, she had chosen a color that was not stained, a pleasant shade of gray that gave the kitchen a new glow. With new furniture and fluffy carpets, the house began to play with magical colors. Having put all her energies into renovating the house, Camila exhausted her energy, fell asleep on the new sofa, and woke up to a knock at the door. The postmistress came. The game was dragging on. The relatives sent a parcel. She opened it anxiously. This time there was no message, just 2 jars with some contents. I opened them carefully and tasted. Wormwood and cloudberry are the same thing. It's a vicious circle. I chose the right path a long time ago. I renovated my mother's house. I realized what I'd done to my family. I lost my son. Tell me, haven't I suffered enough? Is it too soon to forgive me? It's too soon. You don't understand. You didn't lock the door, did you? They'll steal my beauty. You scared me. Camila shuddered. The door. What nonsense. What didn't I realize? You have to close the door. That's not what I meant. You just said that. I didn't say anything else. Are you all kidding me? No one. You're the one who did all the renovations. You don't want to talk about it. Go on. Don't make a mess. I just came by to help us with the housework. My mom asked me to. All right, I'll be back in an hour. Michael staggered a bit and went out. Camila cooked breakfast in her head, solving the problem she'd been given. If Jennifer knows of her intrigues, then Camila must go through it too. First to feel the bitterness of life, and then there will be hope in the distance and Hope and Cloudberry, her granddaughter. Camila twirled the jar of wormwood infusion, thought, and drank it down. She choked, drank water, and collapsed. By evening, Michael found Camila lying in the kitchen, sound asleep. There was no way to wake her up. He brought her to the hall, put her on the sofa. She looked charming in her sleep. He decided to stay close to her, to wait for her to wake up, so he locked the door. He walked to the kitchen. His eye caught a jar with some kind of potion on the bottom. He smelled something familiar, remembered the inscription in the letter he'd received recently, Wormwood, and thought that Camila's mother had overdone the punishment, but he wouldn't interfere. Let things take their course. They say that Camila herself has been scheming against her daughter-in-law for a year and a half, playing her with her fate and her relationship with her son. He switched off the light and lay down on the bed in the bedroom. Fell asleep quickly, in a sound, farmer's healthy sleep. Camila woke up when it was dark outside the window, surprised that she had no memory of the previous day at all. She opened her eyes and squealed in horror. A dark silhouette stood on her doorstep. She ran to the bedroom, closed the door, sighed, looked at the bed, the scream stuck in her throat. In the semi-darkness, She could see Jennifer sitting with her legs overhung, threatening her with her finger, whispering that she had ruined her unborn children. Jennifer. Jennifer, I'm sorry, for God's sake, it's all my fault, don't hold it against me. An ominous silence was her answer. When Camila looked up in fear, she saw that there was no Jennifer, but a man sleeping on the bed. She jumped up, her temples pounding, her head spinning. She listened, silence, only sniffling. Camila looked out into the living room. No one was there. Switching on the bedroom light, she breathed a sigh of relief. Michael, you scared me. But he was sleeping soundly as a baby, not waking up from his screams. Camila switched off the light and went into the kitchen. There was someone standing at the doorstep. A dark silhouette walked quickly towards Camila. Dazed with horror, she skidded back into the bedroom. But there stood the mother, with an angry expression on her face, moved her whole body, approached, threatened with a finger. Why have you ruined the children, you foolish daughter? She spoiled everyone's life, she herself is in silk. But she didn't think about her mother. Mummy, don't. I'm sorry, don't swear, I'll fix everything. Everything will be different. Her mother had almost reached her and stretched out her hands. Then Michael woke up. He saw Camila, who looked into the void and whispered in madness a plea for forgiveness. Camila, what are you doing? Camila finally saw that there was no one in the room but Michael. His shout made her eyes clearer, but the fear remained.
There's someone in the corridor.
Why did you drink wormwood last night? You can't have visions. Wormwood doesn't give you visions. Something's been spiked, that's what it is. And you can have the second jar. Camila flinched. Jennifer was talking to her. Cloudberries. Eat some cloudberries. Oh my God, it was Jennifer again. My head hurts. It's impossible. Let's go to Mum. She'll tell you what to do. Take the jar. Camila obediently got ready. She could still hear someone else's footsteps in the house. Shadows seemed to lurk in the corners. She fumbled, grabbing Michael by the arm. Has your mother let you go yet?
Just out of sleep, I think.
Mrs. Kimberly took the jar, sniffed and laughed. Well, darling, you'll be dreaming of things for a long time to come. Grebes for Grebes, they should have called it. The neighbor laughed again, but sat her guest down. She fiddled with the herbs and poured some fragrant tea. Here, drink it. It'll make you feel better. You probably have a headache. Thank you. I hope it doesn't make me feel better.
If you don't want to drink it, get out of here.
Why are you being so strange, Mrs. Kimberly? You're always pushing me around. Now you're helping me. Camila, remember the basic truth. You can forgive anything, but you can't atone for the guilt of an innocent child. Camila to the house saw Michael, said that today with her babysitting will come in the evening. The woman entered the house anxiously, not noticing anything suspicious. Her head felt heavy and she wanted to sleep. She fell asleep quickly, barely putting her head on the pillow. She woke up to her family's voice. Hello, daughter. Her mother was sitting on the edge of the sofa. Mum, hello, how I missed you. What a beauty you've made. I wish I'd done it before. It would have been so nice. Mum, I'm sorry, Camila cried, tried to get up but couldn't. She struggled on the sofa, opened her eyes, the cushion was wet. There was no one in the house, it was just a dream. But Mum, we'll meet for real. I'll change everything. My head was still heavy, dizzy, my temples ached. I went to the kitchen, took a jar of jam, twirled it around, tasted it by machine, struggled to do housework. After tidying up, she decided to cook something tasty, make some pies to treat Michael to in the evening. She had a secret sympathy for her neighbor. She felt at ease with him, as if he were her own. After an hour, she was surprised to note that her head was gone and her consciousness was clear. A burst of strength and appetite reminded her that she had quite recovered. Cloudberries helped. For after tea, Mrs. Kimberly had dreams. Camila was starting a new phase of her life, determined to find something to do so she wouldn't sit idle. She used to work under her husband in the prosecutor's office as a secretary. Together with Nicholas's father, they had made a fortune and become respected people in the city. But now Camila realized that no luxury could replace family. The longing for her son, the desire to see her granddaughter and meet her mother became the main value of her life. It was getting dark. Camila cooked some goodies and waited for Michael's arrival, and then, angry, decided to go to bed. There was a knock at the door, but instead of her neighbor, a girl came in and slipped her an envelope and disappeared. This made Camila completely angry. She wanted to throw the letter away, but she relocated herself, sat down and printed out the message. Many roads lead to redemption, but unfortunately not all of them are peaceful. Sounds like a threat. Came a man's voice over the top of her ear. Who's there? Camila shrieked in horror and jumped up sharply. Scaring you is my job. Michael laughed, genuinely laughing at his hostess. Did you do that on purpose? And I baked you pies, you will not get a single one. Get out of here. I'm an old woman. I have nerves, I have a weak heart. If I don't live to see my son and granddaughter, you'll be responsible for this sin. You know that, mark my word. You cursed me. You should close the door. What's the fashion? She came like a witch. I'll go to bed, mad woman. Wait, sit down, eat. Woof. What are you doing? You're giving me commands like a dog. I'm sorry, I was only joking. Bring me your pies. Okay, but don't sneak around again. Next time I'll give my soul to God for sure. Don't be pompous, you've got another 30 years on you. What kind of treatment is that? Don't you have any other words for me? There are, but you'll like them even less. Don't say anything. I can't imagine what's going on in your head. You, Michael said with a sudden change of tone, and then added with a smirk, you, my love, are a pain in the arse. Camila Jones choked on her tea, coughed up tears, wanted to answer something, but instead sat silently, her eyes goggling. Have you lost your mind, you furry hedgehog? The suitor did not expect such a reaction. He wanted mutual recognition, warmth of relations, that she would lower her eyes modestly, take her hand and say that she needed him very much. Indignantly, he jumped up, ran outside, and Camila slumped into her chair. She herself had not expected such a reaction from herself. She was considered a reserved lady. Why did she have the country ways of a silly girl? After cleaning up the kitchen and closing the doors, she lay down. She woke up early, remembered last night with shame, and then fulfilled the promise she had made to herself. Before lunch, she went round the village looking for work. Everywhere they offered only temporary help in the household. Then she resolutely went home and changed her clothes. Redemption, that's what was needed. That's what the letter said. First, she went to Mrs. Kimberly's house to help with the vegetable garden. Then she went round the neighbors to make life easier for the old people. She didn't take any money for her work, and she refused to buy groceries. It was getting dark by the time she got home. Her back was sore from unaccustomedness, but she felt happy. For the first time in many days, she felt proud. As she approached the porch, she heard a rustling behind the house, a dark figure, a vision. She decided to see what was there, but after walking a few steps, she suddenly fell into a hole, hit her head on something hard, and lost consciousness. When I woke up, it was unclear what time of day it was, but it was dark all around. She turned her head and tried to get up, bumped herself, shrieked, felt around. There were wooden walls everywhere, boards on top. She was trapped in some kind of box. A cold, sickening sense of dread filled her. The hopelessness of it scared her deathly. Help me. Help me. Help. Camila screamed and thrashed hysterically. It seemed to her that an infinite amount of time had passed. Her body felt stiff, her head ached, but she took a full breath and calmed down. She remembered the words from the letter, not all roads to redemption are peaceful. It was too much, too much. You can't torture a person like that, you can't. Camila screamed and cried as she climbed to the top. Then she noticed that the lid was sliding. She pressed her hands and head against it, opened it with effort, was blinded by daylight, squeezed her eyes shut, then stood up. Her heart hammered and nearly stopped with terror. She was standing in a grave, in a coffin. It was a cemetery. From the last strength on weakening legs, she began to get out of the grave. At that time, the drunken watchman came running to her screams. When he saw someone climbing out of the grave, he almost had a stroke, but he ran up and managed to push Camila out of the grave. Ugh, damned zombie, sit with your ugly face, where your relatives put you. Despair seized the unhappy woman, but she guessed to talk calmly. Granddaddy and Granddaddy, be careful. She called out to the watchman. Oh, it's the evil one. Lord, forgive me. I've sinned. I repent. I swear I'll never drink again. Grandfather, I'm alive. I fell down. I was visiting my family, and here is an open grave. Grandfather, please help me, pitifully pleaded Camilla. A cunning zombie, pretending to be a human. He looked into the grave, saw Camilla there, in her black work clothes, with her tangled hair loose. Help me, you idiot, you stupid bloody fool. Get me out of here at once. She whispered in helplessness, as if hissing at her grandfather. Holy Mother of God, what a disgrace. The watchman ran away frightened, not stopping to cross himself. Well, and go, you heartless man, go yourself. On the third attempt, Camilla got out. The cemetery was deserted, beyond it a field, a path led somewhere, but where the village was, it was difficult to understand.
The roads to redemption are far from peaceful.
How did I even get here? How could anyone do this to a living person? I sat down by the roadside, braiding my hair, which seemed deliberately unraveled and tangled. In the ominous silence of the cemetery, thoughts of life and death came to mind. This is the end of everyone's life. How much in us is empty, unnecessary, contrived? The end of one in the grave, damp earth. As long as you're alive, you should not only think about yourself. I wasn't crying, it's just dumbness. There's a path ahead. Does it lead to a new life? I have to go through it. Maybe this is the road that's not peaceful. Mummy, tell me, are you playing games with me? How could you do such a thing? Camilla knew the answer. She had forgotten the way to her mother. It was time to go back. That's where the soul would be born again. She mentally forgave for everything. This redemption was important. She would overcome any difficulties and beg for forgiveness. The path led to the road. Only no one passed by. In about 15 minutes, Camilla was exhausted. She was thirsty and her legs ached. She sat down on the side of the road and decided to wait for a car. A tractor appeared, and by some fateful coincidence, Kevin was behind the wheel, and he agreed to give her a lift to the village for a small fee. Camilla breathed a sigh of relief, then noticed a familiar rucksack at her feet, leaned over and twirled it, horrified to see the secret embroidery on the strap, which she herself had customized for her son, Nick Johnson. Stop this right now. Tell me where you got that from. I found this rucksack on the side of the road. It was a long time ago. I don't remember when. Tell me the truth. Camilla went after the driver, slapped him. Kevin didn't stand for it, got out and threw the woman out of the tractor and drove off. Camilla Jones made her way to the village in tears. She was determined to find out for sure. There was a glimmer of hope of finding her son. His rucksack is here, so Nicholas has arrived. He and Jennifer are not far away. They're making fun of her. When she reached home, she locked herself in the dark and fell into a heavy sleep. Michael came to her more than once, but could not get through. Camilla woke up for the first time late in the afternoon, heated water, washed herself properly, and ate with appetite. Life was coming back to her. The apathy of the last few days had subsided. She got dressed up and took her documents, deciding to go to the neighborhood policeman. Hello, 5 years ago my son went to this small town but never returned. Wait, said the officer on duty. I'll call a neighborhood policeman to you, and you'll make a statement with him. The woman waited for an hour. Then she was invited into the office. Hello, Richard Gray, the district police officer. What do you want to see us about? Camilla Jones gave a detailed account of the events of the last 5 years. She described yesterday's incident in detail. She was asked to write a statement, promising to sort out the rucksack. Called in the evening, told to report to the station, refused to search. Kevin Reed showed a brand new rucksack with no embroidery. The house was searched. Nothing was found. A clever bloke figured out what was going on, got rid of the stuff, burnt it in the backyard. Camilla did not achieve anything. The trail was broken, but she did not take the statement. The policeman angrily escorted the woman out, stiffly telling her that Nicholas was missing. Camilla did not give up. She decided to turn to Michael for help. She needed to nail this Kevin guy to the wall, but the neighbor refused to help. Are you crazy going to an ex-prisoner with a war? Just take it easy. It'll work itself out. Don't you realize that's my son's rucksack? I haven't seen him in 5 years, and this Kevin Reed guy is obviously making trouble. If you don't help me, I'll go to him myself. No, you can't stop, and anyway, where the hell were you yesterday? Helping out in the garden for free again. Yeah, I was helping out, digging in the ground. She didn't want to say anything so she wouldn't scare Michael. Let's face it, I don't need it. It keeps my mind off my dark thoughts. They stood on the doorstep, arms around each other, as if they were young, with all the burdens off their shoulders. People who had passed the test, forgiven each other for the present and the past. Mrs. Kimberly was calm, but only told him to help with the household chores as before. The new message arrived 2 days after the cemetery. Camila was already expecting it and opened it without excitement. It was a postcard with an invitation to visit the holiday home by the river. Michael took the news calmly. Mrs. Kimberly sighed mysteriously, smiled imperceptibly. They both knew the landlady of this inn. Camila had one last test ahead of her. Michael refused to go with her no matter how much she begged him. He remained adamant. Camila hastily packed, took the invitation card and set off on her journey. The journey was not long, about an hour. The good road changed to a road without tarmac, and it became more difficult to drive. Every now and then the car bounced. Finally, a holiday home appeared in the distance, occupying an impressive space. Several hunting lodges and a 2-story building were located along the river. At the gate, the guard let her through without question. Driving into the territory, she read the name. In bright red letters on the building was written Cloudberry. 5 years ago, Jennifer Jones had found herself on the street because of her mother-in-law's dastardly scheming. The biggest blow was her husband's betrayal. Did not believe, did not support, kicked out as a mean woman. She could not bear it. Her heart was broken. There was no point in living any further. Without a shadow of a doubt, she stepped on the road, but a man who was passing nearby, a second before the irreparable, pushed Jennifer away. She only hit her head, but still went to the hospital. The doctor told the unbelievable news. The girl was pregnant. Only this saved Jennifer from the monstrous pain on her heart. She wiped her tears and decided to live against fate. She did not want to return to her husband. She could not forgive the betrayal. There was only one way back to her homeland, to her native small town. When Jennifer returned, she tidied up the house and cried for 5 days after being locked up. It was worth it to get her life together for the sake of her child. After relocating herself, she drove into town and quit her job at the shop. Camila's mother, Nicholas's grandmother, the same Mrs. Cassandra, met Jennifer at the shop and told her to tell her the truth. They were not only neighbors. Jennifer often helped with the household. Nicholas's grandmother came to visit. The girl became a native for a lonely woman, but Camila did not know it and did not see beyond her nose. In the evening, the pregnant Jennifer could not resist and told Mrs. Cassandra at length what she had been through in the past year and a half. The neighbor wept, unable to believe the meanness of her own daughter. Then the old woman took Jennifer in to help her through this difficult time. The girl got a job in a bakery and managed to help her patroness as well. When Camila came in search of traces of Nicholas and Jennifer, the daughter-in-law was in the next room. She also bribed the people of her town to make her mother-in-law think Jennifer had not returned to the village. Not for a second did the daughter-in-law feel sorry for her mother-in-law, but the news about Nicholas disturbed her. She began her search. The first attempts to find her husband were in vain. 7 months later, Jennifer gave birth to a daughter and named her Caroline. One day, walking on the riverbank, the girl thought how good it is in a small town. From the big city you can rest. After all, it is a very good idea to build a house on the shore, so that in it the inhabitants of the big city could have a rest. This thought she shared with Mrs. Cassandra. To her great surprise, she brought the whole 2 million wrapped in a cloth. Wow, where did you get that kind of wealth? I've been saving, Camila's been throwing money at me like a dog and I can't spend it. She wouldn't show her face to me for 5 years. Only Nicholas used to come round and leave me some money too. I saved up. I wanted to give it to a good cause or a church. I don't need anything myself. Take it. I'm sorry to you. You've suffered because of my daughter. Thank you. It's not just for me. It's for you and a good cause. After consulting a lawyer from the city, Jennifer got a permit and bought a plot of land by the river. The first house came out small. At first, Jennifer didn't think it would be anything worthwhile. She advertised in the city. People showed up, buying places 2 months in advance. A year later, 2 two-story buildings were built, supplemented with hunting lodges. The demand did not fall, and the profit grew. For the summer, Jennifer and her grandmother moved into a cabin built especially for them. All the while, the girl continued her search. She knew that Nicholas never returned home. From work, he was expelled because of a long absence. Jennifer traveled all over the county in search of her husband. Once she remembered the godforsaken farm, Nicholas, who lived under the name Norman, remembered the past in scraps. Once he had easily settled a dispute between men by reciting lines of law that popped up. After that, people began to go to him for minor matters, to secure their property by law, or to register land, to fill out documents. It became clear, not just a guest was sheltered. Over time, Nicholas cooled to his common law wife. An unknown anxiety was troubling his soul. He went to the river all day fishing, wistfully recalled the same village, his grandmother. Pictures of the past life gradually returned to him. Catherine immediately realized that Norman began to avoid her. The stern girl packed her things and returned to her mother. Nicholas Jones has not thought to return that one. Only suffering he brought his indifference. There, in the depths of memories, woke up feeling for the mysterious girl with a basket of cloudberries. He saw her in a dream, walking along the road. Then everything was cut off by a black cloth. So he suffered for another 6 months, remembering the past in fragments. He found out where he was found, and the next day, without informing anyone of his plans, was going to go to his native small town. In the morning, he got up early, got on his motorbike, and drove away. It had been almost 2 years since he had crashed before reaching his destination. Now he knew for sure that this journey had to be completed. That same day, Jennifer arrived at the farm where Nicholas lived. She went round 5 yards before they dared to tell her the truth about the accident. Jennifer was taken to Nicholas's house, but no one was there. The villagers threw up their hands and invited her to visit. She could finally tell who they had sheltered, they in their village. Nicholas pulled onto the road, read the signs, looked around, then stopped his gaze on the cars that occasionally passed by. He remembered, instantly refreshed, the memory of that fateful day when a tractor had driven at him on this very spot. Jennifer, a sharp pain stabbed at his heart. How will you be without me? He guessed that all the misfortunes had befallen them, only because of his own mother. One planted packet of pills and a fictitious note had ruined an entire family's life. Nicholas took a long time to come to his senses, hesitant to continue on his way. He walked between the trees, horrified by the abyss in which he had lived for the last 2 years, as if he had come out of a coma. Finally, he decided to go to his grandmother to comfort her. It seemed to him that an eternity had passed. When he reached his grandmother's doorstep, he ran into the veranda. Towards him, hearing the motorcycle, ran out Mrs. Cassandroy. Both were crying and laughing. "Nicholas, you're alive," I felt, my darling. That you were coming back, that you were alive. Let me look at you. You've grown up. Grandma, you're still the same, don't cry. It's all right. Everything will be different now. How could you torture us like that for 2 years? Didn't your heart tell you? Didn't you feel sorry for your family? I just remembered you today, Grandma. Where's Jennifer? She went to look for you. You don't know anything, Father. She gave me a sly grin and led me into the house. Caroline, come and meet your father. Nicholas saw a little girl looking with clear blue eyes. Daughter. He exhaled and burst into bitter tears again. Kicked out his pregnant wife. For 2 years she was alone without him. The girl shook her uncle's hand and ran off to play. She was brought up by her mother and grandmother. She was too young to understand the complexities of life. Where's Jennifer? Jennifer went looking for you? She's been looking all the time. She went to the farm. Nicholas shuddered as he missed his wife. That fate was confusing them. He decided to wait here for her return and had a long talk with his grandmother. Mrs. Cassandra bitterly told him that not only Jennifer but also his other girls had been turned away from her son by his mother. Camila once even repented in a fit of despair about how she had separated her son from Jennifer, how she had written a letter to her son on his behalf, how she had wanted to make him infertile. Nicholas could hardly believe that his mother had arranged the meanness. A lump came to his throat. In vain, he didn't believe his wife, defended his mother. Because of her, he had almost lost his life, his wife and his daughter. Grandma, you can't let it go. I can't. I don't want to see or know her again. Jennifer returned late at night, approaching the house, saw Nicholas's motorbike, dazed, burst into tears and rushed into the house with all her might. Bursting in, she threw herself around Nicholas' neck because she knew her lover had not betrayed her. Caroline ran to her mother and started beating Nicholas with her palms, afraid that her uncle would hurt her mother. They decided to all live together, but moved into a holiday home, which needed owner supervision. Mrs. Cassandra stayed on, promising to move in with her grandson and great-granddaughter later. The holiday home prospered, growing. Nicholas's help proved invaluable. They correctly registered the property, expanded, wisely conducted business. Nicholas called his daughter Cloudberry and spent all his free time with her. The girl did not dote on her father, attached to him with all his heart. For 3 more years, Nicholas did not want to hear anything about his mother. Time has softened him a little, and he decided to forgive his mother. But only by changing would she be forgiven. Nicholas himself devised a plan of redemption. Jennifer and grandmother accepted the proposal to teach her mother a lesson, not immediately. It seemed too cruel a way to bring Camilla to her senses. Come on, Nicholas, Mom's been through enough. 5 years since she lost you. Jennifer, she didn't even spare our future children. Nicholas, I never drank her teas. It was impossible to drink that stuff. Sometimes she switched the decoction, sometimes she poured it out. It was disgusting. What did she use for wormwood? Let her drink the wormwood herself. It was like this. Nicholas had been living at the house of Mrs. Kimberly, a neighbor. When Camilla came to the house, the son was in the back room, a few meters away from his mother. He was glad to have her around, alive and well, but changing her character was more important than meeting her. For the time being, Mrs. Cassandra had moved into Jones's house at the holiday base. Nicholas wrote a message, changing his handwriting beyond recognition. He wanted his mother herself to feel a little of what Jennifer had experienced. It didn't seem enough for him to just confuse her. He invented a whole epic of redemption, remorse, separation from his granddaughter, the bitterness of loneliness. The cloudberries and wormwood were also prepared by Mrs. Kimberly, and the wormwood was laced with sleeping pills and hallucinogenic grapes. It seemed unnecessary, superfluous, but Nicholas persuaded his neighbor, as it could do no harm. At the pharmacy, they took a remedy for poisoning, which they mixed into the cloudberries. Nicholas came in the night when his mother drank a decoction of wormwood, worried how she felt. But it turned out that the son only aggravated the situation, scaring the mother to death. The story of the repairs and help stunned Nicholas. It was beyond his plans, but it was a good sign. Camilla changed beyond recognition, began dating Michael. The neighbor was against this punishment, but he could not change anyone's mind. He only supported Camilla in her troubles. The hardest step for the son was the story of the cemetery, but once he himself cheated death, as if born again, he looked at everything with different eyes. He wanted to make his mother feel the same way. The hole was not deep, but he forgot to put the shovel away. Camilla hit her head, but not badly. Nicholas gave her a shot with sleeping pills and took her to a pre-prepared hole in the cemetery. There was indeed a man to be buried there, so the grave was dug. He hastily chipped something that looked like a coffin, more like a box with a lid easily removable from the inside. He had even carefully placed a pillow. Later, Nicholas was horrified at what he had done, but remembering that Jennifer had lived in hell for 1.5 years and then almost lost a child, he calmed his conscience. He waited anxiously for his mother's return. He knew that the local people would pick her up on the road. The lust for life would take its toll. Camilla returned in a deplorable state, and then went to the police station. But Richard Gray knew Nicholas's story, and even befriended him, sometimes using his legal knowledge. He rang Camilla's son beforehand and asked what to do. That way Camilla didn't find out ahead of time that Nicholas was alive. Perhaps the son's decision to leave his mother in the dark was too cruel. For 3 years he held a grudge. He couldn't forgive. Only Jennifer, P, and Grandma softened his heart. They sympathized with Camilla with all their souls, several times wanted to tell her that Nicholas was alive, but did not dare to interfere. The long-awaited moment had come. Camilla Jones arrived at their holiday home and entered the main building. There was no one in the lobby. An Indian tune was playing. She looked around, saw the television, and was taken aback. Pictures of her granddaughter, mother, daughter-in-law, and son were changing one after another. Nicholas, she whispered quietly, tearfully. "I'm sorry, Mum." A familiar voice sounded behind her. Camilla turned round, saw Nicholas, shrieked, and fell senseless. She had to call an ambulance. Later it got worse. They took her to the city clinic. The woman had suffered a stroke. Nicholas could not believe what was happening. Instead of a happy reunion and family reunion, he drove his mother to the hospital. Silenced, Mrs. Cassandra, without a word, packed up, left for her home. The magical transformation of the dwelling echoed painfully in her heart. Her daughter had lovingly furnished it. She had made a miracle with her own hands. The old mother sat on the new sofa, thinking that not so long ago Camila had slept here. "I forgive you, my daughter," she said tearfully. She lay down on the sofa and fell asleep and never woke up again. In the evening, Mrs. Cassandra was visited by Michael as usual, but it was too late. He broke the sad news to the Johnsons. 3 days later, the funeral took place. Half the town gathered to say goodbye. Nicholas and Jennifer cried uncontrollably. Cloudberry screamed loudly, unable to understand why her beloved grandmother had been buried in the ground. Camila was discharged a week later. Still recovering from the blow, she tried to speak, but nothing came out. She could hardly move, mumbled and cried. For the first time, the family lived at Mrs. Cassandra's house. Nicholas nursed his mother, gave her massages, made her do exercises, and in the evenings got on his motorbike and went somewhere. He couldn't forgive himself for the anger he harbored towards his mother. Whatever she was still his own. He himself is just as bad a person. He himself must go on a journey of redemption. His mother's illness, his grandmother's death, and the weight of guilt heaped on his shoulders. Michael came to Camila, took her in his arms, put her in the pram he had bought for her, and they walked together along the river. After 2 months, Camila began to speak and walk on her own. "Michael, I want to go home."
Where to?
"To the city." "And your son, your granddaughter? Are you coming with me?" "How can I leave my mum?" "You'll visit her. We'll get her a helper." Michael was really attached to Camille. After some thought, he agreed. The next day, while Nicholas and Jennifer were at work, they left for the city. Nicholas was informed of the move by Mrs. Kimberly, shook her head sternly, and from then on stopped all communication with him. 10 years passed. The young, beautiful Cloudberry, who was now called Caroline, graduated from high school and entered teacher training college. Over time, Camila thawed out, recovered. In the city, she took rehabilitation courses at the best clinic. For the summer, she and Michael moved to the countryside, visiting Nicholas. Mrs. Kimberly lived in the city for 5 years next to her son. She passed away quietly, with God's blessing, buried next to Mrs. Cassandra. They were neighbors as well as they ever were. The family council decided that Caroline would now live in town like a queen. They entrusted her with the ancestral flat. Michael and Camila sold the house in the village, gathered their savings, and went traveling. There were too many painful memories here. The Johnsons Jr. sold Mrs. Cassandra's house, deciding to leave the small town. They bought a condo in Florida, hired a manager for their holiday home base, and moved in. They visited their daughter almost every month, until she graduated and got a job in their small town as a primary school teacher. Camila and Michael come to visit to see their granddaughter. They traveled all over the United States and then went to live by the sea. Over time, the holiday home passed to Caroline, who remains faithful to the land where she was born. Every summer she comes to the cemetery with a basket of cloudberries to visit her grandmother.